Hello, everybody. Welcome to this latest roundtable, this one about cute retro games. Before we start, anyone who's here right now, let me know if you can hear my voice. Let me know what the volume's like, and I'll introduce everyone shortly. Greywood North, thank you. Okay, just waiting for someone to check in. Let me know. All right. Mike, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So let's see. Give me 1 second here. Okay. Okay, is everyone here?
Hello.
Yep.
Howdy.
All right. Well, let's go around the table and introduce everybody. Uh, we'll go counterclockwise here. So first up is Kyle, who you can see is represented by the Kirby UFO. Kyle, anything to say about yourself?
Sure. I go by some internet circles as Chibi UFO or Canadian UFO. I have a deep passion for cute video games and cute things in video games. I've been a huge fan of Rob's work for quite a few years, and I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And you do stream on Twitch, right?
Yes, occasionally. I'm taking a bit of a break due to some internet connection stuff with funding, but I should be able to get some things suited and fixed out in the next couple of months.
Oh, excellent. We have Word on the Wind just popped into chat. And, everyone here except the host, I am Dyer51, otherwise known as Rob the Splatterhouse guy. So, let's move on, and my regular co-host is here. That would be Mike.
Me again.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should say much because he told me to quiet up more this stream if I could help it. I'm just razzing ya.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm Mike. I like games and movies and stuff. I'm writing a book about all sorts of random shit. Doesn't have much of a focus, but I'm getting close to finishing it, so that's something. Not much else to say. Life is on the precipice of a potentially huge upheaval for the better, but otherwise, I'm still me, for better or worse.
I'm refraining from saying anything about that because we've already discussed it in full, pretty much.
Yeah.
And yes, song. Sorry, I'm a bit quiet, but that's unfortunately there seems to be stuff that's I just can't fix it. I don't know what the problem is. So, but moving on to my final co-host here, but certainly not the least, that would be Kate.
Hi, my name is Kate, aka Expert74. I am a co-host on Hardcore Gaming 101's podcast, Top 47,858 Games of All Time, and recently also the editor of said podcast. We scientifically rank a bunch of different games on our list from best to worst, and engage in very passionate, geeky debates on why we think each game deserves to go higher or lower on our list. It's a fun time.
Okay. Yeah, I've participated in a couple of them before. I think the most
Yeah,
recent
it was great to have you on.
Oh, thank you. I think the most recent one I was on hasn't aired yet, has it?
Yeah, I haven't. I should be editing that one soon. It should come out within the next couple weeks, but that's coming up soonish.
Okay, cool. All right, and for those who don't know me, like I said earlier, I am known as Dyer51, aka Rob, the Splatterhouse guy. I run the channel. This is Dyer and Betty, which we upload videos usually every week. We took a break this week, but I work with my wife on this. She's the one who came up with our graphic here, which she does for all the streams. And she decided to try something different this week, and she has a little animation going on. I don't know if you guys can see that or not.
It's cute.
It is very adorable. I am in love with it.
It's an Opa.
Yep. Opa planting a flower. Beyond that, I'm also the webmaster of West Mansion, the Splatterhouse homepage, former webmaster of the OPCFG, and a couple other sites like the Ghoul Realm and the very first English language Metal Slug fan site. And I also write books. In fact, I just signed a contract and I've got 4 books coming out within the next year.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So look for those.
Glad to hear it.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Well, look for those. There's going to be a big announcement in a couple of weeks, and there'll probably be a Kickstarter going in the summer. So, and this is the first you're hearing about this. First anyone's hearing about this, really. So, but, pardon me for just one moment. Alright. Well, let's get to the topic at hand here, which is cute retro games. Now, before we really launch into this, I want to let you know we do have... Hang on a second. Why does your mom let you write 4 books, Snarb?
Oh my goodness.
I wrote these books on my own, damn it. That's actually not true. One of the books is called Digital Archaeology, and it is actually a collection of stories from people all over the world, actually, about their experiencing with retro games or whatnot. Mike has actually contributed several stories to that book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were actually stories that were on the old version of Memoirs of Virtual Caveman. Those basically all got poured over this one, but I did contribute a new one about Cobra Triangle, a game that I'm sure you're familiar and Kate is very familiar with by now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Jesus Christ. But yeah, that game's not so much cute. In fact, I'm not sure Rare did any especially cute.
Snake, Rattle, and Roll, maybe.
Yeah, from that era.
Anyway, obviously we can't cover everything in one night, but there's a few things we're specifically excluding because it would just take too much time to cover everything. The Mario series, and we're not covering any of the Extreme Critter stuff from the 90s. You know, Sonic, Awesome Possum, Bubsy, all that stuff. Nothing Disney, no Looney Tunes, no Pokemon. We're focusing on some of the more obscure stuff. So, that said, we could take a look at original IPs first. And God knows there's a lot of them. In fact, why don't we start with Kyle's avatar here, Kirby.
Sure.
What do you think?
I would be very humbled and very happy to start with that. I think Kirby's a very interesting and I think just kind of incredible stance of a character. To be this cute and to have such a long-running franchise that still is very much of good quality. Like, there's never been some crappy edgelord Kirby or whatever. Like, it's just a solid character that's just always sort of been around for literally 31 years at this point, and it just had a solid game after solid game after solid game and fun spin-offs and just, real just landmark quality. I think that's I don't know. I think that's just amazing. That's so impressive.
I can't argue with that. Also, saying hey to Scroll Boss, who just showed up in time for the Kirby talk. And for those of you who tuned in last time we did a roundtable, Scroll Boss was on with us discussing brawlers. So, what are your thoughts on Kirby, Mike?
Yeah, I pretty much line up with Kyle. I'm really just impressed at the series' overall consistency. I mean, it has absolutely evolved, but I would say it's one of the more, and I know this word has terrible connotations nowadays, I would say it's a more relatively quote-unquote conservative game series in that it knows what it is and what it's doing, and you know what you're going to get out of it. At least if it's a mainline game. Of course, you know, there's whatever spin-offs there are, like Canvas Curse and Mass Attack and what have you. But I really can't say there is an outright bad game in the series. The closest there is a not as good as the others game,
Yeah,
which
most
I mean,
definitely.
if I had to say one that it falls only on the okay pile, a lot of people seem to point to Squeak Squad, the mainline DS entry, as possibly being the most I don't like the word mediocre, the least best of the mainline Kirby's, but heck, I still liked it. Sure, it's not superstar, but then what is? I mean, heck, Dreamland 3 gets too much undue flack for some reason, and I never understood that, damn it.
I don't get that either. How
Yeah,
about you?
anyway.
Dreamland 3 is such an odd game in that it's so beautiful and cute, and yet the very final battle of that game is one of the most terrifying pieces. Like, I can't believe that Kirby's like can still be considered a kid series or a series appropriate for kids when like something like that happens. Like, wow.
Yeah, that's the secret sauce about Kirby. It is 95% an adorable game until you get to the final boss, which is invariably some sort of horror beyond the cosmos or something enhanced by some unholy power or whatever that's bound to deliver the nightmares. It's pretty much how Earthbound did it as well.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
But
And I'm very familiar with Earthbound.
By the way,
same
Mike,
here.
I think you tossed down a gauntlet.
what's up?
What word on the wind said, "What Squeak Squad is fine, better than Nightmare in Dreamland."
Oh, here we go.
I'm not going to argue with you that much. I still like Squeak Squad a lot, and I mean, I still prefer the original Kirby's Adventure over Nightmare in Dreamland for what
Same.
it's worth. So
Same here.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that too much for it. I think you're not in the wrong with that. And yes, Snarb is correct. King DDD was just the final boss of the original. It's funny to look back on the original, the very first Kirby's Dreamland game ever on the original Game Boy, because that was even before Kirby had his famous copy the powers of enemies he eats ability.
Yeah, that's a very simple game. Like,
Very. I mean, I still quite like it, but even just compared to Adventure, which I think was immediately the next game after that, it's like friggin' night and day. It's amazing.
Yeah,
But, Kate, go ahead.
yeah, Kate.
I've played like a handful of Kirby games. To be honest, I think I like the character more than the actual games. I think
valid. Valid.
Like-
Totally valid.
like I think the character itself, like Kirby's an adorable blob, and I guess of the games that I've played, I probably enjoyed Kirby 64 the most. I never actually owned that, but I remember renting it on the N64 when I was a kid. And
Great.
I actually 100%ed that game and got the true ending, and that was pretty fun to do. But in
Yeah.
general, I feel like, at least of the Kirby games that I've played, they're generally decent. Like, they're not bad games at all, but I guess they just feel a little too easy for me. I kind of wish they were more challenging.
That is a universal, kind of sort of criticism I've heard about the series in the whole. And my opinion is, there are some games I don't play for the challenge. I usually don't play Kirby for the challenge. I think it's just fine as it is. Although there are usually like higher difficulty modes of some
definitely.
sort that give him some more punch. But I will say yes, Kirby 64 is excellent. You love it. Song loves it. My friend Andrew loves it. And it's the only game I can think of where Kirby gets to wield a Darth Maul double-edged lightsaber. So bonus points.
You
Oh,
forgot
yeah.
the actual greatest copy ability from Kirby 64, the Kirby fridge.
Fridge,
Yes.
the fridge. That one's busted.
And
There's
as
fridge in
a
that?
of course, as a Canuckian, I just have to also announce that Kirby can also turn into a curling stone, which, of course, yes.
Nice.
Yeah. The power fusion is excellent. Actually, it is very, very much like Gunstar Heroes' weapon gimmick, combining its weapons, except that there are, I believe, 7 powers in that game to mix and match instead of just 4. So.
Mm.
But can't think of a bad Kirby game. The sort of go-to for everyone claiming it's their favorite is Kirby Superstar, and really I can't argue that game's flipping
Yeah.
amazing. But
Oh, definitely.
uh,
I admit that's one that I have not played.
I haven't
well,
either,
Kate,
actually.
if
Oh!
the
Oh my
well,
goodness!
flip.
Whoa!
Well, Kate, Rob, if either of you want to look into more Kirby, definitely I would recommend getting right on Superstar, at least if you haven't played Adventure yet.
I'll definitely consider it.
So will I.
Okie dokes. Just
Yeah.
let us know.
I do want to share a story about Kirby, basically. Now, at this point in time, I've only played a handful of Kirby games. I've played the Game Boy games. I've played Adventure. I've played 3. I played 64 for a little while, and I think yes, I know I played Kirby's Avalanche because one of my daughters has a copy of it.
My first exposure to Puyo.
Now,
Nice.
Nice.
yeah, here's the story, though. Back in 1999, I had a very, very bad breakup with my ex-fiance. And at the time, the only one I'd actually played was Kirby's Adventure. And I remember I was feeling depressed. I was in the process of basically reinventing myself at that point because I wanted to distance myself from everything that was going on. But obviously, I was still into gaming. Well, I happened to be in a Toys R Us one day, and I saw they had Kirby's Dream Land 3 on clearance. So I said, it's Kirby. I like adventure. Why not? I'll pick it up. So I did, picked it up, brought it home. I gotta say, that game cheered me right the hell up.
Oh,
It's such a beautiful game. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that's I mean, I already have a very special fondness for the Super Nintendo because it's my favorite console of all time. But like at the very end of that lifespan of the console, like a game like that coming out, like just looking at the graphics of it, it's just breathtaking. It's like I feel like you could show that graphic to like the youngest gamer who was only playing, I don't know, Fortnite, like, and they would be like, "Whoa, what's that? That looks amazing!" Like,
The only thing about that game, though, is if you happen to pick Nago the cat, don't die.
oh
no. Oh, no.
no, 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 oh no, 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 no,
I even did
no.
I even did a bit on the OPCFG about that way back in the day.
I remember that. Oh my
Yep.
god.
I can't forget it even if I wanted to.
It's as bad as what happens in Ring King between rounds.
Oh no.
Sigh.
Anyway, but yeah, I will go ahead and look up which is that Kirby game you recommended?
Superstar.
Superstar, thank you.
That's billed as 6 games in one. It's a bit of an odd structure that it's like the stages, quote unquote, are framed as like different smaller set Kirby games stacked next to each other, but I think that they're like a sort of straight line evolution difficulty, and they all have their own little touches and gimmicks. Although Gourmet Race, despite being a main game, is pretty weird apart from the rest, but yeah, definitely check it out someday.
And Bruno is here.
Hey, BL.
He's one of our
Howdy.
regulars. So glad to see you made it. And when we get to talking about Genesis stuff, expect him to object. Don't worry about it. It's an in-joke between the two of us. But yeah, let's move on from Kirby for now. And why don't we address a subject that's flying across our screen right now? Fantasy Zone.
Yes, look at him. Oh, look at the little
Open and go.
Yep, flies across screen, plants a flower. Betty worked very hard on that.
Yes.
So,
Him trying his best.
yep, and you succeeded. So, speaking of Fantasy Zone, Kyle, you have anything you want to say about the series?
Yes, I do quite enjoy it. I think as a series, it's very just. I think it's such a mishmash of like interesting things of just like the color scaling of those games. Of the first couple of Fantasy Zones, especially the first game, is just so mesmerizing. Like I love how colorful the game is. The design of Opa Opa is just so classic and adorable, and I just I feel like if you want to melt my heart or just like you just want me to just lose myself, I lose myself at watching Opa Opa's little feet. Like when you land the Opa Opa and it starts walking, I'm like, that's just the cutest thing. Oh my god! Ah, yes, and like I do quite enjoy the series. It actually the series has something that I actually don't like, but I actually cut it slack because like it's used so well, and that's the whole thing of like getting money to buy things in a game. Like I'm actually not a fan of that type of a game design, but I excuse it for Fantasy Zone because like it's used so well and it's so addicting and just like wow, this is actually really solid game design. And I think my favorite out of the series, like I love the first game. I love that neat second game on the Master System and that weird remake that got developed by M2. But my favorite is actually Super Fantasy Zone for the Mega Drive and the Genesis. I remember getting into that. How did I get into it? I think I was in my early teen years through emulation, and I really like. I played some Fantasy Zone before that, but I don't know, for some reason I just really bonded with Super Fantasy Zone. Something about it just really clicked in my mind.
It's a quality game.
Oh yeah.
Very.
Yeah. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, between Super Fantasy Zone and Fantasy Zone 2 DX, which I still can't believe was a thing that actually was made, I don't know which of those two I like more. Although 2DX I did grow to really, really like with its fantastic 3DS port. And by the way, sudden PSA, tomorrow's your last day to get 3DS games over the internet, so please do that if there's any you're waiting on. But
Get on it.
Yeah.
anyway, it's freaking Nintendo. Anyway, but yeah, really solid games, and I do also love the first as well. They had some solid Master System ports and NES ports as well, but I actually wasn't the hugest fan of Fantasy Zone when I was younger. Ironic that I grew to appreciate a relatively cuter game as I got older, but there was some point when I realized, and I don't know when it clicked, it might have been when I was playing Fantasy Zone, which is a full-fledged minigame in Yakuza 0, that I realized, wow, this game's freaking tough. And then I just got addicted trying to beat it, and I just love blazing through the stages as fast as I can, although some of them can be real struggles depending on what enemy patterns you get, and I do think the shop is very well done. I'm also, like Kyle, mixed on shop implementations and games such as that, but I really like that one, especially the laser, especially the one stage where all the enemy bases are on the floor and you could just run through, voiping them into oblivion with the laser and whatnot. Excellent series. I just have to note the peculiarity of Fantasy Zone having an inexplicably dark storyline running with it.
Yeah, once again.
Yeah, but before we get into that, hang on a sec, Mike.
Yes.
I just want to address the chat real quick. Apparently, Word on the Wind's only played Fantasy Zone The Maze.
What?
Curious.
I love Fantasy Zone The Maze, but come on.
It's the only Pac-Man clone on the Master System. And also the other one he's really put time into is Zillion. That involves Opa Opa. Because, yeah, Opa Opa is a part of that.
Yeah, of course.
Snarb's never played a Fantasy Zone game.
Oh my
Rob,
goodness!
Rob, I should note that Word is female, so.
My apologies. So, it's kind of hard to tell, just based on text. So.
No worries.
But my apologies. Anyway.
No worries.
Yeah, Snarb has never played a Fantasy Zone game.
Have you,
Dang, man.
Snarp? Have you lived life? Like, have you breathed oxygen? Like, how have you not played Fantasy Zone? It's so cute and colorful and just mesmerizing.
It's a little ironic because I think Snarb's more of a Sega fan than I am,
That
but
is
don't
funny.
worry, we're really good friends. I'll badger him later.
Snarb also
Good,
asked
thank
if
you.
Space Harrier and Fantasy Zone are related besides the word Super Fantasy Zone.
Do we want to get into that since we're talking about the series? That
Yeah, honestly, the only thing I can really say about that is the unfinished, unreleased
exactly.
TurboGrafx game that was
Yes,
going to combine the
exactly.
two of them.
Yes, and very even that game is canceled. Unfortunately, it's as a game that's canceled. Even that game is relentlessly charming. The ending is like the cutest thing ever. The cutscenes are done like little like crayon drawings done by like imagine like a little kid drawing things with crayon, and seriously, it's so cute. I love it. It's so cute.
Yeah, a shame that one never got released. I'm not sure if I played it yet, but I would like to. Anyway, Kate, you have any opinions on Fantasy Zone?
According to Kyle, I just started breathing air about half a year ago.
Oh my goodness.
Barely than
Yeah.
never, as they say.
I tried the arcade Fantasy Zone for the first time really recently, and I think it's a pretty cool game. I'm not always someone who's super into playing arcade shooters, but I think it has a very charming style. It is very adorable that when you fly along the ground, the ship's feet fly out and start
Yes!
running on the ground. It's
Yes!
super cute. I feel like the shop mechanic is actually kind of interesting because the weapons have kind of a timer attached to them. So I think it's like 20 seconds approximately before they go away. So regardless of how well you play, you only have the weapons for a set amount of time. And that kind of encourages you to conserve your resources and think about how you're going to use the weapons. So, like, if you want to use something like, say, the laser, which hits really hard and really fast, then you're going to want to make sure that you can use that as efficiently as possible. And in addition, every single time you buy a weapon, when you try to buy it again, its price increases. So that kind of discourages you from buying all of the items all of the time. So it makes you really think about, okay, can I get through this stage with that weapon, or can I do it without it? And it might make you decide to do without it so that you can get through and conserve your resources for the end game. It's a really hard game. I've never beaten it, but
Oh, it
I
is.
think I got to like stage
Yeah.
5 or 6 or so, and I might go back to try and beat it someday, but that would take a while.
Hey, congratulations.
Yeah, that's about
Thanks.
when it gets really tough, so definitely good to get that far. I will say if there is one universal criticism I have about the series, is that the final stage before the final boss is invariably just a straight-up boss rush, and frankly, I'm not really a fan of those if they don't offer anything new, especially when you have to fight the boss that you just killed in the previous stage right before
Yeah.
that one. I just did this like 3 minutes ago. Why the hell do I have to do it again?
Yeah.
It's
But no series is above reproach, so it is what it is.
no, of course, yeah.
Because
And-
they want you to put in more quarters.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, it comes with being the result of an arcade game. But
Mm.
Scroll Boss mentioned there the M2 port remake reimagining on the Sega Genesis on the Sega Classics Collection compilation was
Oh, that's
great.
yeah, that's M2 is just one of my favorite like gaming companies, period, and everything they've ever done, like everything, like
Yeah.
literally everything they've ever done. I'm just so blown away by how they port things, how they're able to just do things so properly, and they'll even put in a few extras. Like I'm blown away every single time. I love them so much.
Oh, absolutely. Now,
And Kyle, you're sorry, Rob.
no, go ahead, finish.
Kyle, your enthusiasm is infectious. My good friend Andrew just popped in, and he said that your passionate rant a few minutes ago has him firing up Super Fantasy Zone right now. It's very worth playing, though, so yes, I heartily endorse this event and/or product.
Well, as far as Fantasy Zone and I are concerned, back in the early 90s, I remember my brother and I going to the flea market down here, and he actually bought the original game.
Nice.
And I remember playing the hell out of it and actually finishing it. And that last boss, spoiler alert for a over 30-year-old game, it's Opa Opa's father.
Oh
But
my.
he's a royal pain, I can tell you that. But I was sufficiently intrigued enough to start checking out the rest of the series. So I eventually played 2, the Maze, the Famicom versions of 1 and 2. Super Fantasy Zone, and the TurboGrafx Fantasy Zone, and yeah, so I've actually, right now, I've got a decent amount of Fantasy Zone games. So it's been a series I've enjoyed quite a bit, and actually, Namco's Ordyne came out a couple of years after that, and it's very reminiscent.
Oh, I
of
love that game.
Yeah, Ordyne's great.
Really good one.
Mhm.
Yes.
But it's got the same thing, with the whole going to the shop, buy the limited power-ups and whatnot. So,
Ordyne is my second favorite game on Namco Museum Volume 4 for the PS1.
Nice.
If it
Oh,
wasn't for Genpei Tomiden, it would be my favorite, but that one just really spoke to me for some reason. That game is the very opposite of cute, however, so it's immaterial.
Yeah. Got some cute aspects, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
oh yeah.
They're
I
babies.
think Ordyne has, not to move the subject, but just I want a quick little comment. But
Sure.
Ordyne has one of my very favorite little cute design things. Is that whenever you beat a boss and like after the game screen changes screens to like the little score screen, there's a little picture of like the main characters. I oh my god, I'm blanking on their names. They actually have full names, but there's a
Sorry.
yes, there's a little picture of them with like the boss, and they're usually doing something with the boss, and the boss has little googly eyes. And I'm like,
That's Ordyne.
gosh
right?
darn it, I love that, just putting googly eyes on.
It is adorable, yes.
Adding googly eyes to anything usually is just comedy gold.
I know.
So,
It worked for Daniels,
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And look at how many Oscars they got. And so
and they deserved every single one, damn it.
yep.
I wholeheartedly agree.
I'm with you on that.
And also about Ordyne, fantastic soundtrack. There's some really catchy tunes in that game.
Oh yeah.
Big
And
fan
then-
of Shinji Hosoe. Great composer.
Yes, I know him primarily for the Street Fighter EX series. Him and his partner
Oh!
Sayako Sasso and Takayuki Aihara. Again, not cute games, but my god, their soundtrack is beyond the horizon.
Subject for another debate or topic or whatever discussion, but I love those EX games so much.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
Well,
love
I'm going
them.
to jump around a little bit here. We haven't heard much from
All right.
Kate so far, but let's talk about a game that she recommended originally. Umehara Kawase. Which I think
Yes!
I-
Oh my gosh, I
Oh.
love Umehara Kawase. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
I've only played a little bit of it myself, but it's been intriguing, so by all means, fill us in on it.
So Umehara Kawase is my favorite platformer series of all time. It actually still gets new releases to this day, with its newest entry being on the Switch. My favorite one, however, is the original game, which came out for the Super Famicom in 1994. Umehara Kawase is a platformer based around a unique grappling hook mechanic. If you're familiar with Bionic Commando, just picture something like the grappling hook in that game, except instead of feeling stiff and rigid, it feels a lot more stretchy and bouncy in comparison. And that's the fishing line in Umehara Kawase. And in addition to being bouncy and stretchy with its own physics system attached to it, you can also reel your line in or out, which allows you to pull off a ton of interesting moves once you master the controls. So like if you're underneath the platform, you can swing back and forth and swing yourself all the way around to the top of the platform and do all of that without any kind of jump involved. So there's a ton of cool stuff that you can do like that. And in addition, many stages have multiple exit doors. Usually one of them will be easy to reach, while the other will be significantly more challenging to reach. And that demands that you master the game's mechanics in order to go down that door, which adds a ton of replay value. And another thing connected to replay is you can actually view and save your playthroughs of each stage. So having a replay feature on an actual Super Famicom cartridge is pretty huge. It doesn't have a ton of space to store them on original hardware, of course, but it's still really fascinating that way back in the game's original release, it had a feature such as that to encourage players to replay stages and finish them in as short a time as possible.
I actually didn't know that.
Pretty sweet.
Like I said, I'd only played it a little bit myself, and I remember being a little baffled at first. If I remember correctly, the main character is a little girl, right?
Yeah, she's a schoolgirl. I think in the later games she's older, but in the original game she's in like elementary school.
Oh, okay. And I remember also it just being kind of surrealistic as far as the backgrounds and stuff were concerned.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how a lot of the backgrounds in the game are literally just like photographs that were digitized and put into the game. It adds to its kind of absurd dreamlike feeling.
Yeah, it just, I remember playing it. I got through a couple of stages and I'm like, I got to come back to this one day, but I have yet to do that.
It has a learning curve for sure, but I think it's the kind of game that really rewards like taking the time to get into it. It's definitely like it's not the kind of game that has a bunch of upgrades that you pick up over the course of the game. You have your entire move set from the very start of the game, and however you make your way through the game, your progress is going to be based on mastering those mechanics rather than just having the game give you stuff. So it really demands learning the game inside and out.
I'm actually putting together a nice list here of games I either have to go back to or that I have to try out. So,
Nice.
Mike, do you have anything to say about that game?
I quite respect Umihara Kawase's style, but I'm actually kind of crap at it. And I hate to sound like a prideful little insignificant human, but I hate admitting that I'm outright bad at any game, especially a platformer. Those are supposed to be my bread and butter, but physics was one of my worst high school subjects, and I can't quite seem to grok how the grappling hook works in some situations. I'm pretty sure that, well, I was doing okay at first, but I believe I was streaming Umihara Kawase, and I think Kate was on that broadcast.
Yeah, I
And
saw
there's
that
just this
stream.
one level, I think it had something to do with the conveyor belt. I'd probably know the level if I saw it specifically, but like I had like 8 continues left. This one freaking level killed me. All continues gone. I just could not do it. I just felt terribly embarrassed. It was just a debacle.
Well, that's where practice comes in. Like, I
Yeah,
wasn't great at the game when I first started playing it. I think I probably lost all of my lives in the first couple stages the first time I played. And it
right.
took a bunch of trying and over in order to get to the point where I am, where, like, now, after years of experience, I can finish some stages in like a few seconds, taking a completely different path than what the developers originally intended. And
Sweet.
I really value that in the game.
Yeah, there is really a lot to like about the game, and it's one I would like to go back to at some point. I haven't been as turned off by a single level in that game as I have the Bloody Swamp in Kid Chameleon on the Genesis. We will not be discussing that game tonight, by the by.
Good
You
thing, because I
know,
hate that game.
if you want, you could just take a different path. Like I said, there are
Yeah,
multiple like exit doors,
I
and
know.
I think there are like 4 different ending stages in the game, so there are a bunch of different places you can go, even if one stage is giving you a hard time.
Yeah, there are several goals, as I remember. Curiously enough, though, the game doesn't really have much of an ending, does it?
Um, it doesn't even have a story. I think none of the
Nice.
games actually had stories until the most recent one on Switch. Up
Well,
until that point, that made the series very import friendly, since you
yeah.
didn't need to know any Japanese at all to play it, since there's literally no story.
Well,
It's just gameplay only.
I believe a storyless video game is Rob's favorite type of video game, so, all the
Hey.
better.
Even the games I
Wow.
like have stories to them, even if they're just the president has been kidnapped by ninjas. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president?
10 out of 10.
Yeah. So
Yes.
cool it with that, Mike.
Okie dokers. Unjust slander and all. It's just the stories you generally like can be summed up in a single sentence, but it's still important.
Whoa.
I'm just messing with you as much as you're messing with me right now.
I sure hope so.
Yes, I am. How about you, Kyle?
I actually, well, I'm happy this was brought up because I love Umihara Kawase. I have no qualms with admitting that I am absolutely terrible at it. Physics stuff, I'm also, wasn't my greatest subject in high school. High school was a dark period for me. That's a whole other story. But
Same.
yeah,
Couldn't help I had a crappy teacher also.
Relatable.
yeah, same. But at the same time, Umihara Kawase makes physics. I don't know how to make this sound like some cliche adult trying to talk to the kids, but Umihara Kawase makes physics fun. Like just playing with your little fishing rod as Umihara or as the girl character, and just trying out jumps and trick jumps and trying to make a jump and just swinging around everywhere. Like, I love Kate for mentioning this and comparing it to Bionic Commando, where, like, yes, taking the idea of Bionic Commando and cranking it up to like 20 and just
Yeah.
having so much fun with the idea of swinging around. Like, that first game in particular too is just so excellent and golden. I also kind of love its origins of just like this really unknown Japanese game developer like coming out with a game like this for the Super Famicom, and like it becomes this like weird underdog from like getting so many like different little fan bases of Japanese fan bases and international fan bases through emulation, and getting notoriety from like getting appearances on stuff like Game Center CX. Like, I love it. Like, that's so I love it. I love seeing a game getting that type of notoriety. That's wonderful.
Heartwarming.
I love Umihara Kawase so much. I can't really get into any of the sequels. Nothing against them. It just, I don't know, like, the physics of that first game are so specific, and I that's the only one I feel like I can really gel with. But yeah, like, really good series overall, but I especially love that first game. Just brilliant game design.
I get
Kyle,
what you mean
Oh,
about the... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when Kyle mentioned earlier that it makes physics fun, I could actually hear that in Strong Bad's voice.
Yeah, it's pretty on point.
Fun!
Learning fun. He actually said that in some episodes, Street Female, but I can't remember which one off the top of my head.
Oh
But
my
anyway.
goodness.
Kate, you were saying.
I hear what you mean about the physics in the later games. I feel like it's kind of hard to describe. I think they definitely took a different approach starting with the PlayStation 1 game,
Yeah.
Umihara Kawase Shun.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember the fishing line in that game felt shorter and also springier. And like, if you practice with it, then you can get the hang of that as well. And I did make some progress in Shun, but even then, to this day, there are some stages in Shun that I still have not beaten, which is unlike the original game, in which I've 100%ed that game. I have yet to be able to 100% Shun, because that game, like another thing, the physics definitely throw me off a little, but one thing that's a bit of an annoyance for me is starting with Shun, they have like the gameplay itself is still a 2D side scroller and you
Hmm.
have sprites, but the backgrounds are in 3D and the camera moves a little, like shifting to the left or the right, kind of panning as you move around the stage.
Hmm.
And I feel like that makes it more difficult to play. And since you don't really get a perfect sense of where you're going to swing and where you can safely grapple, um, funnily enough, the the third game, Sayonara, had that same issue, but I actually found it a lot more playable with VR. I borrowed a VR headset from a friend,
Weird.
and
Okay.
that way you could just keep your head still and avoid the camera turning, like the camera pan, and that made it more playable for me. So I wish that that could be added to the PlayStation game as well. That would make it easier for me to play.
Hmm.
But yeah, I hear what you mean.
Well, I basically said my piece about the game, but I'm definitely going to go back to it now. So
I hope
let's.
you enjoy it.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully, well, I like what I played before, so. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a left turn back into mainly 8-bit stuff here. Specifically, I'd like to discuss a triumvirate of games by Sunsoft. You may have heard of them: Hebereke, Gimmick, and Trip World.
Nice.
So, Kate, how about you lead off with this?
Oh, I've out of those, I've played Gimmick. I found it pretty challenging. I think I got like 2 or maybe 3 stages in. That's another game that kind of has its own physics-based system where you're playing as this like short, chibi dinosaur-looking character who has a star that you can toss out, and you can jump on the star and have it bounce around into enemies or use it as a platform. It's very challenging. It has a very slippery feel to its controls. I feel like it's the kind of game that I would probably really love if I put more time into it, but it's at this point in time, it's a bit challenging for me to get the hang of. And the other 2 games I have not played, so I will let someone else handle that.
Ah, okay. What about you, Mike? I know you've at least played Hebereke and Gimmick.
Yes, I even managed to beat Gimmick once, and that even includes find all the secret items and beat the true final boss. However, as a caveat, this was on the easier European version that gives you more lives to work with. I'm not sure if I could accomplish that on the original Japanese version, but yeah, Gimmick is definitely not easy. You absolutely need to learn how to ride your own stars in order to reach some of those secret items, and even in a few cases, just survive. That Stage 5 boss is flippin' merciless, but really, really good game. Fantastic graphics, amazing soundtrack, and the physics are really neat, if not tricky. You do have a pretty slow attack, but the game works pretty well with it once you know what you're doing with it. And yeah, it's definitely a game I wish we would have gotten in the USA. Europe got it, darn it, which I am a little jealous of, but I guess that was now and this is then, as they say.
I mean, games came to the US and not Europe.
That is true. Yes, they did get a few over on us, so fair
Mhm.
trade. And Hibareke I have also played in full. It is also a rad game. It is also a relatively earlier example of the term that I'm a little afraid to say out loud because some people have a burning grudge against it for some reason.
I know
Well,
exactly
okay.
what you're gonna say.
Said term is quote-unquote Metroidvania. I know that makes some people's eyes twitch, but, I'm just going to shut up. We're
I
we're
don't
not discussing
understand why.
semantics tonight. Yeah, I don't
Mm.
either, Kyle. It's weird. But, yeah, no, Hebereke is, really darn good. It's, I think it's not too much of a trifle to explore, but it is very fascinating. The different characters that you find give you all sorts of different abilities, the really cute and colorful aesthetics, and the adorably weird-looking characters. Just everything fuses together so well. The game also came to Europe, although the Hebereki characters were all changed out. Most of them were altered because I guess Hebereki was some sort of other license. I don't know, by whoever else. Sanrio, was it? No, I have no idea. The European version was given the terrible punny title of U4EA. That's, instead of the state of being Euphoria, it's spelled UFOURIA because there are 4 player characters. It's really awful, and I'm not sure the game would have sold so well in the US if it came out under that name, but the gameplay is all still intact, so whichever version you play, it's some really good stuff. Unfortunately, Trip World is not one I have played very much. I've heard it's like a spiritual successor to Gimmick, but it's a game I keep meaning to get around to, and I just never do, so I don't have much comment on that one, I'm afraid. Looks cute, though.
How about you, Kyle?
Well, I've actually played all of the games. I've literally played all the games. Oh boy, this is gonna be an interesting little mini side discussion of this because I love all of them. I actually I'm very fond of all 3 of the games. I think Euphoria or Hebereki. I'll just say Hebereki. Hebereki is a really charming and really well developed open adventure platformer. I think it's very innovative for its time as well. Taking the guide along of such other games as Castlevania 2 and Metroid and just other really interesting and unique for their time open world. I know from modern perspectives the games don't seem that quote-unquote open world, but I think especially for their time they are extremely open world. Take such an open world game design and just really run with it. Hebereki is so charming, and I also love that it's also a little weird with being cute, which I can enjoy if done right. And I think the boss battles are charming. They're not too difficult. You understand pretty quickly what you have to do. I love each characters. I am especially fond of the ghost and the cat boy, the little person in the cat suit. I don't know. I just something about it. I love their eyes. It's very cute. Excuse me. Yeah. Hebereki, really charming game, really good stuff. I love it. Nice soundtrack too. Solid. Man, Sunsoft, just especially that era of Sunsoft.
Yeah.
I do have to admit something. I'm not trying to make anybody feel weird, but like I was born in 1990, so I'm a bit younger. But like, man,
same age as me.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yes, I'm 1 year older than both of you.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways,
I'm an old
if
man,
I could.
So.
He is. He's much older than all of us.
If I could live in an era like I going to like the NES era and just like picking up a game like that for the first time, like any of the good Sunsoft NES games, and playing for the first time and just listening to that music and just being like, what the crap? Whoa, like video game music. Can that be like I love, like I like listening to this. This is, yeah, like I just, man, Sunsoft, what a, that developer in that era is just good stuff. But yeah, anyways,
Let me tell you
Gimmick.
something, Sonny. I was there back in the old days, and I got news for you. Hearing music for the first time in a video game was just mind-blowing. But you're right. That Sunsoft stuff is crazy.
I hope it was. I hope it was mind-blowing. I hope it was just like, whoa, holy crap, this is just like this music. It's so catchy. Yeah. Gimmick, I am absolutely horrible at Gimmick. I've practiced Gimmick. I've gotten somewhat better at Gimmick, but I'm still awful. I would like to one day try to do the ultimate Gimmick challenge of finding the hidden items in the secret areas and then doing the true final boss. But man, Gimmick is a masterpiece of it in its own right. Such a well-made and competent, like, the developers of that game, I just can't help but just commend them for making such a just really having such confidence in their own game design. That is fantastic. And one of my favorite cute things is also actually in Gimmick. It's in the second level. I believe it's the second level. There's these little turtle enemies that like have little conch shell looking things, little shells on their backs. If you flip them over, like they slowly walk along, and if you flip them over, and if you stand on them, they start like trying to kick you off by like moving their little legs. It's just sorry, I love that so much. That's one of the cutest things in a video game. I lose it every single time. And to wrap things up with with the third game in this, I big fan of it. I actually did beat it. Really charming game. I love the character designs. Very simple and cute. Very oddly enough, I know it came around the same time as Kirby Trip World. But I like the character designs. Very interesting. Very Kirby-like and just simple. And also, really, once again, Sunsoft, banger soundtrack. There's some really catchy music in this game. Especially like I think it's the third world music. Just this really charming little like tropical sounding little ditty. Just it's so catchy. It's so uplifting. It's really charming. I really love it.
Nice. My experience with these three games have been interesting. I obviously first played Gimmick and Hebereke via emulation because I'd never even heard of those games until then. I eventually ended up getting a repro of Gimmick that was sold through the old retro USB site, and it was a repro of the American prototype, which was actually reviewed in EGM as being an upcoming release for the NES until Sunsoft canceled it, like they did most of their late games. I never got very far in it, though. I think maybe stage 3, and it just walked all over me at that point. Having played the Japanese version too, same thing. Hebereke, I've played both that and Euphoria, and it's one that I'd like to sink more time into, but I just haven't yet. And Trip World. This is actually kind of an interesting story. I'd heard of it, but I had never actually played it until sometime in late 2014. I just published a second version of Memoirs of a Virtual Caveman, and one of the guys I knew who read the book and liked it, his name was Julius, big fan of the book, sent me a surprise package along with a very nice note, which I currently have hanging on my wall. And in this package, he included several games. He called them trinkets. Then again, this dude was trying to build Japan 2 in his house, I swear. But in there were a couple of boxed Famicom games, some Super Famicom games, a couple PC Engine games, and Trip World. It was, a loose copy, but I was just like, wow, I've heard of this game. I remember when I showed off the picture. At the time, I was keeping him anonymous. Unfortunately, Julius passed away early last year.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm sad he'll never actually get to see the final edition of Memoirs make print. But I remember posting that on social media and whatnot, and the people who commented who knew games were like, oh my god, Trip World? It's like, yeah, I can't believe it either. One guy even commented, best shock box ever. Julius later sent me another package with a couple other things to help research on the book I was going to be working on, which was the NES Player's Guide to the Famicom, which I may still do. I haven't decided yet. But I played some of Trip World, but I didn't really have anything to play it on, so I had to borrow my sister's Game Boy and then run it back to her eventually. She lived out in a different city than me. I never finished it, though. So it's still kind of just sitting here, not being used. But someday I'll get back to it. I keep saying that. So Let's go ahead and detour now back to almost the dawn of the medium, except in this case we'll be looking at an unreleased game which didn't see the light of day until the Activision Classics Collection, or whatever it was called, for the PS2 in the early aughts. That game was called Kabobber.
Yes.
Kabobber is a very cute game and kind of weird. I'm still not sure if I know exactly how to play it or not. So,
Oh my God.
Kate, let's kick things off with you.
Gladly. Yeah. It's an Atari 2600 game, and it never actually came out, as he said. It was completed around 1983, and it ended up being shelved due to the developer having a disagreement with Activision over its development. I think the developer, I believe Rex Bradford, considered what he had created for the game complete, essentially, but Activision wanted him to add more to the game, and he was like, "No, it's done." And it just never came out until like years later when it got leaked online, and then it got a couple official releases like in the Activision collection. Um, so the game itself, Kabobber doesn't really have an actual plot. Like the plot was never conceived by the creator, but some people on our Atari age came up with the plot for it retroactively. I'm not really a fan of the decided terminology for the characters, but basically you control an army of Bovskis who look like blue light bulbs or balloons that have single dot eyes, and you're racing against time to chase after and capture Princess Bubsky, who looks the same but is pink, before she reaches the rainbow at the end of each stage and escapes. Along the way, you fight several enemies, including Govskis, who look like Bubskis but are green. I really don't like these names. And Cholos, which are orange faces with legs and a head, and Strovskis, which are red faces with legs, as well as sentient boots that are invincible and should be avoided at all costs. And the way that you play it, you have your characters on a square grid, going from left to right, scrolling. And instead of controlling one character, you can have up to 9 units in your army of sorts at any given time. Your army can hop on and devour enemies, but if they hop onto your square first, then they devour you instead. The main enemies to focus on devouring are the Gubskis, the green Kabobbers, since each one you destroy adds an extra reserve unit to your roster at the bottom of the screen. And then when you press the button, that adds 1 unit to your army, who starts out in a tiny, cute baby form. In baby form, they're fragile and will die to anything, unless you use them to successfully devour an enemy Govski. If that happens, then they grow to adult size and become a fully formed Bubski, ready to serve in your army. So you're constantly pushing forward to the right along a square grid, dodging or devouring enemies, and adding new units to your army as you progress in an attempt to capture Princess Bubski. It's a very weird idea for a game, and it's hard to even categorize into a specific genre, really, but I find it incredibly fun and engaging. It's pretty much my favorite 2600 game. I really adore it. And as far as 2600 games go, it feels pretty darn cute to me.
And you said the names you've been using all came from Atari Age?
I I'm not 100% certain. I know Atari Age, I think they had a contest and they came up with the plot, but from an interview, it sounded kind of like the names were created by the developer, maybe, but at any rate, the plot that they have was made by Atari Age. I'm not really clear on the specific details, but basically they had a contest to create a plot for a game that had no plot.
Ah, okay. Mike, you ever play this one?
I have, yes. Not for too long, and I don't think I have as much to say about it as Kate did, but it's a really neat game, and I really have to wonder why it didn't get released in the end, because, I mean, as you all know, it's hard to think of nowadays, considering how tainted the name is, but Activision did absolutely used to be quality back in the 2600 era, and
It was
I
their
can't
golden
really.
age.
Yeah, I mean, I believe Rob maintains and is certainly correct that the Activision today is just some other unassociated company wearing the dead skin of the Activision of old, so to speak.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't think of a single bad I'm sure they had some that weren't all zingers, but I can't think of a single bad Activision game on the 2600, and this one is definitely among their more unique and creative ideas. It reminds me of a much faster, simpler, and better version of the infamous Famicom and I think MSX game Boko Suka Wars.
Really
um, I know. That probably. I mean, like this game is much better than that piece of crap. But I don't know, just the basic premise of like commanding an army at the same time and you know just assimilating other enemies just felt somewhat reminiscent of that. I mean, there are enough differences, but yeah, don't play Bokusuka Wars. Just play Kabobber. Why it was unreleased, I don't know, but I'm glad it's at least playable in full nowadays, and it is definitely one I can recommend. So,
For sure.
How about you, Kyle?
As someone who is, well, at the same time, wasn't around for the primary Atari 2600 era, I actually am very, very fond of the Atari 2600 and have quite a few favorites. I have unfortunately not played this, but I really want to play this. This sounds very interesting. I watched a quick little YouTube video on the side, and I am really impressed by this. This is really, like, especially for its time, and yeah, like this is really interesting. I definitely want to try this out. And yes, oh man, Activision during the 2600 era of Ataris, that was like the Konami before Konami, like the Capcom before Capcom, like just
You know,
wow.
The funny thing about that is Konami actually made 2600 games.
Yeah, they did. That's such a good point, especially with the arcade games they made as well, like Frogger.
Yeah, you know, Parker Brothers published that for the 2600. Yeah, that's a cute enough game in of itself. You know, it's Frogger.
Oh yes, of course,
Although,
yeah.
I can only say one thing about Frogger. If you cannot see a frog as big as your car, you should not be driving.
Yeah, no kidding.
Anyway,
Also-
yeah, go on.
Sorry, just little quick note thingy about that as well, but with Frogger. Gotta love the fact that you there's no buttons in that game. You just literally just a joystick. I love that. That's brilliant.
It's like
For sure.
Pac-Man in that regard.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of which, the original cute game, Pac-Man.
Yes. Yes.
Let us
Pac-Man.
discuss the big fat yellow Edie face and all of his relations and spin-offs, and we're not going to go into that much detail, but let's talk Pac-Man for a little bit. Kyle, Pac-Man.
Oh my goodness, I love Pac-Man so very much. Long time fan since I was a little one. Just such a simple game, such brilliance. Especially from like that era, like 1980. Like that's amazing. That's so incredible. And this game is not aged at all. Like the graphics still look really nice. The black with the blue and the like the various colors of the ghost and the yellow of Pac-Man, like the color usages. Like I swear, like early 80s arcade games, like especially stuff from like Namco.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the usages of color are just gorgeous. Like and I know this is not Namco, but Centipede, for example. Like Centipede's another one that is gorgeous. Shout out to women in game design. Thumbs up, hell yeah. Always a big fan of that. Women in game design.
On a side note,
but-
since you mentioned Centipede, I just want to say right now I'm looking at the side art of my Centipede cab.
Ah, I am very
Nice.
jealous of that. That's, yeah, brilliant game. But yeah, just just that early '80s era of arcade games and just the usages of color is so important and just gorgeous. Just is not aged at all. It's still amazing. I love Pac-Man. I love the design. The design is so simple and cute. I even love all its weird spin-offs. I consider Pac-Land to be one of the greatest games of all time. Probably
I
the
love Pac-Land.
Pac-Land's. I find it funny that we give Super Mario Brothers a as like one of the defining platformers. I feel like where's the love for Pac-Land? I know its control scheme's a little odd, but that was made a full year before, and I think that's such an I think that should also be an iconic platformer because that game did so much more, and that was a year before Super Mario Brothers.
And
Pac-Land is
just to say one thing about when Namco ported it to the TurboGrafx scene.
Oh,
yes. They actually included an option where you could switch between two control schemes.
Yes,
Great.
I think that's an even better topic, which you want to talk with that too. Like Namco loved the PC Engine and the TurboGrafx, but just man, I love that port so much of Pac-Land. Just fantastic game, really charming, such good solid controls. They like I love certain I love the ideas that they use for the game, especially with like to while you're doing a jump, just mash the jump button or the jump whatever your jump command is, and that's how you float. Like I love that. That's brilliant. But yeah, Pac-Man, I love Pac-Man with all my heart. Just longtime fan. I love the original game. I love Miss Pac-Man. I love all the weird spin-offs. I'm 33 years old, and I just still have my heart set for Pac-Man.
Funnily enough, I actually played through the entirety of the TurboGrafx port of Pac-Land, and I never knew that you could change the controls. I just thought it was kind of weird that you would move with the face buttons, but I just got used to it, and I ended up really enjoying it regardless.
Well,
and the way to change the controls is so simple. It's just you just push a button and it'll say on the title screen like, "Oh, lever control, pad control." Like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
It's not immediately apparent what that means, and I didn't look at the manual, so that's
no, of course.
on me a little, but I liked it, so no one was harmed.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah, Pac-Man still holds up very well today for a reason, and all its derivations, Ms. Pac-Man, of course, being the most famous and probably arguably the best of them. And then you have the neat and odd Super Pac-Man, the quite adorable Pac and Pal with that little green blob. Miru, I believe it was? I think that's the thing that Scroll Boss is referring to.
I believe that's the name. Yeah.
Yeah, of the Pal in question, so to speak. I actually recently got to play Baby Pac-Man of all games. The weird,
nice.
Video game / pinball hybrid. I had no idea what the heck I was doing with it, but it was an interesting novelty to say the least.
It's a little confusing at first.
Yeah, absolutely. Pac-Man comes in all sorts of shapes, flavors, and forms, but my personal favorite Pac-Man game is also one that I hate was named the way that it was in the West, and that is, quote-unquote, Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures on the SNES and Genesis. Really should not have been called that.
That's so unfortunate, because it's such a lovely and adorable game. It's so charming.
It's like a top 200 game for me. It just overflows with charm. There's just the premise of like kind of indirectly controlling but guiding at Pac-Man through his daily adventures, which are far more mundane for the most part than they are in his other video games. It is such a unique and fantastic premise. The only other game ever that's anything like that is Wonder Project J, which of course is one that we did not get in the West, but is also similarly quirky and neat. It is such a neat game that I'd gladly recommend to anyone just for the quirk factor.
Yes.
But calling it Pac-Man 2 is bad because it plays nothing like Pac-Man. Anyone who was expecting like, oh my god, this is the Pac-Man 2, let's play, what the heck? And then they had the rug pulled out under them, and just due to expectations being not what they thought it would be, they probably wrote it off as crap. And That's just not fair at all. It's the
Maybe
original
they
Japanese
were-
title was Hello Pac-Man.
Yeah,
so we
hello
should have
Pac-Man.
Pokemon.
That's so. Even that title is so cute. Hello Pac-Man.
Absolutely. I think they should have just stuck with that. I don't. To take a page from the Best Friends book, calling it Pac-Man 2 was a very Paul marketing move.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Maybe they
it's,
called it that because they were inspired by Super Mario Brothers 2.
Oh my
well,
god.
by that metric, it would certainly be a part of the bizarre sequel gimmick that several series back in the 80s went with, only for Pac-Man 3 to just be like Pac-Man, but with 4 different pickable characters and nice enhanced chip that all the other stuff that Castlevania 3 had. We should really have a Castlevania roundtable someday, but I digress.
Oh, that's coming, Mike. Don't worry.
Hooray!
Something I also just want to make a small little quick note of Pac-Man 2, which, by the way, Hello Pac-Man is such an adorable title. I love it. That is just
Yeah.
relentlessly cute.
We should
Just
stick
relentlessly
with
cute.
it. Seriously.
I just want to say the Game Center CX episode on Hello Pac-Man is
Yes.
also hilarious.
Yes.
There are so many funny moments in that episode. I love that episode so much.
I'm just over looking at the chat, and I see something that Word said here. The charm of Pac-Man being a colossal dick to his neighbors.
Yes.
Nice.
Yep.
How about you,
Yeah,
Kate?
pretty much.
Anything else to say about the old fat yellow face?
Me?
Hello, that's a bad thing to say to her.
He's yellow and is basically a moving face. Come on, Mike.
Well,
Oh my goodness.
have you ever seen You Only Live Twice? You might want to think again about using that term.
So, as I said, I really love Pac-Land, and I grew up with Pac-Man 2: The New Adventures on Super NES. I never did beat it. I think I got to maybe the 3rd chapter or so. I'd like to go back and beat that someday. But as far as traditional Pac-Man gameplay goes, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of it. I think the main thing for me is that I struggle with the ghost's AI, since each ghost has its own unique AI, and really that's a commendable feature, especially considering when the game was made, to have each ghost behave in a different way, but it just feels like a lot to worry about, and I am just... Like, I can generally get to stage 2 or 3 or so, but it just never really grabbed me. Like, as far as... I'm not, like, a huge maze chase person, but I suppose I would prefer other games like Mr. Do over Pac-Man, as far as that kind of maze chase gameplay goes. It's just not really my thing.
Mr. Do is some good stuff, I will say that.
I
Yeah.
love Mr. Do. Big fan.
And believe it or not, Pac-Man actually has patterns that you can... I have diagrams of them in an old book here that you can actually follow, and you'll completely avoid the ghosts. In fact, one of them was described as being like the video game version of the Blue Angels.
That's amazing.
So
Wow.
now, when it comes to me and Pac-Man, I mean, I am old, and I remember back when Pac-Man first appeared in arcades, and then we got it for the Atari 2600, and it
Oh,
was
no.
not very good.
The
But
same sound effects that are used today in many TV shows of
Yes.
that damn port.
It gave us a stock sound effect library, if nothing else.
exactly. But I also remember when Miss Pac-Man came out for the 2600, which was miles better, and then Junior Pac-Man came out for it, which was actually pretty phenomenal.
Somehow, yeah.
Hell yeah.
But
Nice.
and of course, I'd played the arcade. I even played Baby Pac-Man back in the day when I was on vacation one year. Let's see. Super Pac-Man's always been my favorite, actually, out of all of them. Followed closely by Pac-Land and Pac-Mania.
Yes.
Oh, Pac-Mania. Those are all, like... Super Pac-Man for the longest time was my favorite Pac-Man, but I don't know. Like, I think it might be the original Pac-Man for me. but Pac-Mania is also just so good. Such a nice little reinvention.
On a side note, Andrew just mentioned that his friend brought over a childhood Pac-Man fever record. Got to play the vinyl in 2023.
Yes!
I have
Yes!
I have done the
Catchy
same
song.
thing because I own that myself, and my stepdaughter has a record player. So, but
That's still a catchy song. Still
Oh, yeah.
a really catchy song.
I do want to actually bring up a couple of Pac-Man games that weren't mentioned. Pac-Man Arrangement is one of them.
Ooh, nice.
That is I was blown away by that game. And another one, let's see, which is the one I was just thinking of. Well, there's Pac-Man Championship Edition and the DMake that came out for the Switch, which is actually playable on Nintendo hardware if you know how.
Heck yeah.
But mainly what I want to talk about right now is the fantastic selection of Pac-Man homebrew games for the Atari 7800. There is a homebrewer who goes by the name Pac-Man Plus, and he has released, he's done these all from scratch by himself. He's done Super Pac-Man, Junior Pac-Man, Baby Pac-Man, and 2 separate Pac-Man collections, all for the Atari 7800. And they are fantastic. I mean, Junior Pac-Man wasn't even sanctioned by Namco. That was something Midway developed. But, you know, if you look apart from that, it's a great little game, and it's too bad that Namco can't actually come to terms with that.
Mm-hmm.
And the port that Pac-Man Plus made, I was just actually discussing it with my old friend Earl on a video he put on his channel recently about Junior Pac-Man. And Baby Pac-Man is the first, basically, video pinball game that ever showed up on the 7800 because I never had one. Unless you count Jinx, which I don't. Well, we won't go there right now. And Super Pac-Man is the reason I started getting into the homebrews in the first place. Because, like I said, it's my favorite Pac-Man game. And I never had a home version of it until the Namco Museum. But I had nothing cartridge-related either until I found out about that. So, Pac-Man Plus does some quality work. And I'll leave it at that. There's plenty of other original IPs we could talk about here. I mean, we've got the Lolo series. We've got all the Taito puzzle games like Bubble Bobble, Liquid Kids, New Zealand Story, Don Doko Don. But there's a couple I'd like to go ahead and touch on in particular here. One of them being Twinkle Star Sprites. Kate, I believe you brought this up.
Yeah. So, Twinkle Star Sprites is an interesting genre hybrid of sorts, originally for the Neo Geo in 1996. It's primarily a vertical arcade shooter, but with a twist. The screen is split into 2 halves, with player 1 on the left and player 2, or the CPU player, on the right. Each player has multiple waves of enemies that fly down at them, and as you shoot them down, they become more and more potent projectiles that get launched across the screen toward the other player's playfield in order to try and cause them to get hit, which feels kind of like a competitive block puzzle game in a way. And whoever manages to survive this onslaught of enemies and projectiles the longest wins. And it's just a really solid idea for a game. I've actually... I don't generally get to play multiplayer games with other people, but I've played Twinkle Star Sprites with multiple friends and my sister, and it's a really fun game. I love it.
Now, this is one that I've had recommended to me, but I don't think I've actually had the opportunity to play, so I'm not going to have much to say about this one.
That's fair.
How about you, Mike?
Oh, Twinkle Star, right.
Yes, Twinkle Star
Sorry.
Sprites.
Multitasking and all of a sudden. Great game. Probably the best one ADK's ever made. They've certainly had a long road within SNK's development, but it is very colorful. I'm quite fond of the Nanja Manja in particular.
Nanja Manja!
Yippers, adorable little hairballs as they are. It's just such an innovative idea, and I wonder why there aren't more like head-to-head versus shoot 'em ups. The only other one I can think of is a game named Change Airblade, where you like it is like one person as a jet fighter and the other one as the actual boss, which is just such an innovative idea. Like, I guess with the nature of how most shmups are, it's not an idea that you would normally see, but TSS makes me think that it should have been something more of a thing. Like, it's just such a neat, innovative idea, and really colorful and adorable to boot. It
For
also
sure.
feels not too far removed from the Fantastic Magical Drop series, also on the Neo Geo, which I don't know if you want to talk about that or Bubble Bobble or what have you. Puzzle Bobble, I should say, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm sorry.
How about you, Kyle? Any thoughts on Twinkle Star Sprites?
I'm not deep into the game, but I do very much enjoy it. I think it's very innovative, and yeah, I'd have to agree with Mike. ADK's probably their best game. Such an innovative, little charming game. I do like it though. I've never gotten quite deep into it, but I still really like it.
Nice. We're going to move away from the original IPs for right now. If we have time at the end, we can always come back and discuss a few of the ones we missed. Before we do, I do want to give a special shout out to the Cotton series, because that's such a great little series. But let's take a different direction here, and in fact, something that's represented by my avatar. Super deformed games, which are usually awfully cute. So we're going to kick this off with Splatterhouse Wampaku Graffiti. What can I say about it? It is a great game. Fun little platformer for the Famicom. It's the cutest Splatterhouse game you'll ever see. And unfortunately was not included with the 2010 game because it didn't fit the tone of what they were aiming for.
Alas.
Yeah. Hey, at least we got the other ones on there. But certain things I like about it. I think my favorite thing is actually the possessed plunger and little poops. Little googly-eyed poops that swarm out of the toilet after you, and they're green. It's just a little hidden thing in the last level, and you can pass right by it if you don't know what you're looking for. And yes, Song, a cute little Splatterhouse game.
I love that this is talked about in a little retrospective discussion about cute games. The phrase, I don't know if you'd want to say this as like a phrase or whatever you'd like to say this as, but just like someone said, a toilet with little poops around it, like.
And they're ridiculously,
I'm sorry,
it's the crazy thing is they're ridiculously adorable. They just with their big Google eyes, they come swarming out of the toilet. You got to just knock them out and take out the plunger. Oh,
I mean, well, don't forget the flavor text before stage 2 says, "Be garbage of cesspool."
Yes,
Don't
exactly.
say flavor right now.
Okay, yeah, that poor choice of words, granted, but
yes. But
yeah.
Also just wanted to mention about Be Garbage a Cesspool. When I was actually given my VIP experience back in 2010 before the 2010 game came out, which, if any of you want to read about that, I have a whole article posted up at West Mansion. I was talking to one of the producers on the game, Dan Tobar, and I mentioned the phrase to him, and he's like, "Huh, what's that from?" I'm like, "That's from the game you said didn't fit the tone. Splatterhouse from Wampaku Graffiti." And he's like, "Oh," and he pulls out his BlackBerry and he starts typing. And he's like, "There, it's up on the official Twitter page." And it's like, "Oh, cool! It'll be like a message from me telling the fans that are, keeping an eye on this that I made it here, okay, and I'm talking to you." So, and I got to talking to the lead artist on the game, Dave Wilkins, and convinced him to put that phrase in the game, written on the wall as graffiti.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. He also included Hell House, ha ha ha, as well, which is the title of the last stage of the game.
Mhm.
And what wasn't Wanpaku Graffiti also mentioned as like a club that Jennifer performed at in one of her less lewd photos?
Yes, yes, it was.
So,
And in
That's
fact,
brilliant.
the
yep.
achievement you get, or trophy for playing the PS3 version, when you defeat Biggie Man, is actually be garbage a cesspool. You're welcome.
Nice.
Yes!
There are traces of my
That's-
fingerprints all over that game, but that's a story for the Splatterhouse stream, which is inevitably coming. So,
Oh, yes.
Cool.
let's just go ahead and bounce around and hear what anyone else has to say about Splatterhouse from Paco Graffiti. Kate?
I've never played it, so I'll pass to someone else.
Oh, you need to rectify that. It's a great game.
Indeed.
But
I'll
since
give it a shot for sure.
you're going to pass, Mike.
Yeah, I also do quite love this game. Ever since I was stalking Rob as a teenager who thought he was the coolest guy ever back then and trolling his guest book on West Mansion.
I can
Yeah, this actually happened.
He called me
Absolutely.
Robbie once. Never
I
do
did.
that.
Oh my god!
Oh, Jiminy Cricket. Well, I can't apologize enough for that, but you have several pieces of dirt on me too, so I guess we're even to some cosmic extent.
Indeed.
Anyway, yeah, learning that there was a Splatterhouse game that we never got out in the West that was like a cutesy parody of the horror genre was just absolutely mind-blowing back then as someone who was just learning the value of imports and, you know, what we didn't get during the 8 and the 16th-bit generations. It is... Like, it's just got so much charm, but it also does play pretty well. I mean, Rick himself is moves very fast, is controllable, easily controllable in midair. His attack's got a little bit of a short range, but it slices out fast enough, and it is on the whole a rather fair game, if not maybe a little bit of an easy one, but I think it's got... I think it's challenging enough on the whole, and is just... filled with so much charm. I'm not sure what my favorite of the many references it makes is. Probably the third boss, who is a very pointed reference to The Fly, more specifically David Cronenberg's take on The Fly because of the more advanced-looking teleporters,
Yep.
Brundlefly and what have you. And my favorite thing about that is that one of the teleporters remains open after you beat the mutant fly, and if you go into it instead of exiting off the screen to the right, you get into one of the game's 2 special stages where you're suddenly transported to Japan. Where you go through that stage, there are those umbrella yokai demons, I forget what they're called, but they're in a lot of video games I played.
Yes.
And then at the end, a geisha does a dance for you, which you can fart by pressing the A button repeatedly. And he says, "How rude you are! Take this crystal ball or whatever." If you just gas it up throughout her performance, you can also be a nice guy, but I almost never am. I mean, you give me the opportunity to mess something up like that, and I'll gladly take it if it's all in good fun. But
Yeah, if you don't...
there's so much like.
I'll say if you don't fart during her performance, she'll at the end be like, "Welcome to Japan. Take this crystal ball. Thank you."
Wow.
I don't think I've ever seen that text, but yeah, there is also an unofficial translation or two. But actually, wait, was the text still the same in the Japanese version anyway?
Basically, the only thing that really needed to be translated was the title screen and what the director says at the end.
Yep. I could talk about this game endlessly, but it's just really charming. If you are a Splatterhouse fan and you've never touched it or even heard of it before, definitely do so. It is definitely one for the fans, and absolutely one that is a very good SD game, which not every game can claim to be.
Very true.
I'm looking at you, Sid of Valis.
Oh god.
I
We'll
agree.
get to that in a minute. But
I'm jumping the gun.
Kyle,
Go on.
how about your thoughts on Wombaku?
I love Wanpaku Graffiti so much. It's so adorable. And I just big fan of the Splatterhouse series, and I especially enjoy Wanpaku Graffiti. Rick, the character sprite of One Pocket Graffiti, is so cute, and I love the zombies. They're just the most adorable thing. I love their once again, googly eyes. The googly eyes and their buck teeth are just so odd, but I love it. I love all of the adorable little parodies of everything in the game. I especially love the Reagan boss fight from The Exorcist. I just love that there's a little chibi Reagan and like she spins her head around and things go flying in the room, and I'm just imagining lines from The Exorcist being quoted. Oh. Anyways, I love that boss fight in particular. And another little great cute moment from the game that I really appreciate is that in the final level in the big house castle house thing, if you one of the side rooms that you can go into is a just a room with a vending machine, and as Rick you can press up on the vending machine and he'll get a drink from it, and then like he'll just stop, open the drink, like a can of pop or beer or I don't know, whatever it is, and he'll just drink it and he regains health. And it's just the sprite of him like taking a drink is once again just one of the cutest things. It's just, oh, I love it so much. It's so cute.
And sometimes you can actually get 2 cans out of that vending machine.
Yes, I love it.
And I'm surprised that neither of you mentioned the Disco Dracula, aka vampire, being Michael Jackson.
Yes, especially with the opening riff of like the actual like 2-second riff of Thriller. Like that's like the music of it. Like that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. So, since we've now covered the most important game in the SD part of this, let's move on to another one. Let's do some Konami. Kid Dracula.
Yes.
Well, Kyle, how would you kick this one off?
Okay. Great game, really charming. Just a really fun little solid little platformer. I'm of the mind though that while the Famicom game it's pretty solid, I much prefer the Game Boy game. I think it's just a better developed game. I think the level design's also a little better too in the Game Boy game. And it's also just a little easier to play with the Game Boy game. But I love it. Very cute. I love the second or third level in the Game Boy game when you're in the sky and you have those little cute little witches fly by and they just drop stuff on you. That's a very big fan of cute witches. Little chibi witches just on their little brooms flying. Just yes, that's very cute. And also really good soundtrack. Lots of just happy little plucky little tunes. Really catchy music. I'm such a big fan of the Kid Dracula games. I wish there were more. I wish there were more.
And let's not forget that the boss, Garamoth, he looks like a little, cute chibi dinosaur in this, but I'm sure you guys must remember his appearance in Symphony of the Night.
Yes.
He is one of the most insanely hard bosses in that game. But it definitely shows a connection between Kid Dracula and Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, Fatal Vision's here. Nice to have you aboard.
Hey.
You came here just in time for our Kid Dracula discussion. So, Mike, your thoughts on Kid Dracula?
Both are very darn good games. I think I might actually prefer the GB one slightly, because its final stage isn't as BS as the NES one is, but yeah, they are really neat and colorful platformers that I can still see how they have a little bit of the spirit of Castlevania in them. It's like, this game is like Gargoyle's Quest. Comparing to Castlevania and Ghosts and Goblins. That's the best comparison I can think of, if that makes sense.
I can see it.
And And yeah, I'm not sure what more to say about them except they're both neat. I like that the Statue of Liberty quizzes you in the middle of the Famicom game, although that part does absolutely make it a necessity that you should seek out a translated version of it, because if you're flying blind in the Japanese version, yeah, that's going to be a royal dice roll, to say the least. But
And on that subject, Fatal Visions mentioned, oh lord, the bedsheet boss.
oh yeah, that's a little uh-oh-y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
In fact, I'm pretty sure that one of them actually had a swastika on their forehead too. So
would be
Actually, that's not a swastika. That's a manji.
Manji, yeah, the
Yes.
good
Right.
version,
Well,
the
if
Yes.
pre-perverted
Sprite's
version.
flipped, then, yeah.
Yes.
But still, it's close enough that people can't really tell the difference. If
Yeah.
they don't know what a
Unfortunately.
manji is, then they're going to just think Nazi.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Gotta love that when you defeat it too, especially the little chibi version, the chibi ghost, before the other ghosts come in, it walks away and it starts crying. Like, you don't see that enough in like a video game. Like, sometimes you do in like a game over screen, but like, you don't see like the boss just like walking away and bawling its eyes out. Like, wow.
and I like how in the Game Boy version, you actually, after you beat the first two, the like Grandpa one comes out and can't do a thing.
Yep.
It's like,
Except-
Grandpa, go to bed. What are you trying to do?
Exactly.
That actually reminds me of a boss from Dynamite Heady, although that was a much creepier take on it, but I digress. That's not a game that is eligible for discussion here, is it?
Well, it's cute, but we got a lot of stuff to cover. So,
We got too much, yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
so Kate, how about you and Kid Dracula?
I beat the Famicom game a few years ago. A few years ago on the Switch, there was a Castlevania Anniversary Collection, which had several old 8 and 16-bit games, and Kid Dracula was one of the ones included. And that was pretty neat, because that was actually the first time that that Famicom game had officially seen release in English. So it had a new localization prepared for it, which has some fun stuff in it, including a Metal Gear reference of all things. And as far as the game itself goes, I think it's decent. It's not necessarily a game that I'm a huge fan of, but I beat it, and I think it's generally fine for what it is. And of course, they edited that symbol off of the first boss's forehead.
Yeah.
But I've never played the Game Boy game, but I almost always hear people insist that that game is really excellent and far better than the Famicom game. So I do want to give that Game Boy version a try at some point. I'll have to do that sometime.
Interestingly, that's actually the first Kid Dracula I owned. When I first got my Super Game Boy, which is long gone, back in the mid 90s when it came out, I remember being at a used game shop somewhere in one of the flea markets, and they had Kid Dracula. I bought it, and on closer inspection, once I got home, I realized I'd actually bought the Japanese version. I don't know how they got it, but it was there. And so I got to play that, and then time went by, and when I started messing around with emulation in the late 90s, I discovered the Famicom game, which I knew it existed because I'd gotten Symphony of the Night that had the music CD with it. That was like one of the first PlayStation imports I got. In fact, it might have been the first. But there was actually a selection of music on that disc from the Famicom version. So I knew it existed, but I didn't get a chance to play it until then. And then I liked it. Both games really remind me of like what would happen if Castlevania met Mega Man.
Yeah.
And I ended up at one point actually buying the Famicom game. And I haven't put too much time into it, but it's still pretty fun. So, but believe me, I could go on about Castlevania related things for a while, but we do have a Castlevania stream upcoming, as I said, so I want to save that until then. And Fatal Vision also comments, Mischief Maker is still one of the cutest games they ever played, and that's
I
right.
love Mischief Makers.
That is
Same.
treasure for you.
Shake, shake.
Yeah, shake, shake.
First treasure game I ever played, believe it or not.
Really?
Same here.
Same.
Mine was Gunstar
Mhm.
Heroes.
That's
when
cool.
it was new.
I love how there's a stage in Mischief Makers that is an absolute homage to the 5th level of Gunstar Heroes, which is just keep going right and demolish everyone your way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I speaking of mischief makers, I love the weird little sound all the characters make when you throw them, and like you can make them kind of another game where you can make characters cry, but like you can make them cry, and like when you throw them and like they make this little like meow sound, and it's like, god damn it, that's so cute. Excuse me.
Makes
Ah,
you feel terrible.
I know.
You have an odd obsession with making video game characters cry, Kyle. I'm a little worried about that.
I do
Oh
not.
my goodness.
I do not. How dare you? I am offended.
Oh, Mike. you put
I'm
your foot
just-
in it.
I'm just-
Harris.
I can be a meanie when I want to. I'm sorry.
So,
When?
anyway, as far as like some other SD games out there, I want to touch on Proteus briefly, but I got a Gradius stream plan too, which is that's
Ooh.
where the bulk of that's going to be.
Heck yeah.
Alright.
And let's see. Rest in peace, Mike. And let's see. Besides that, you know what? Let's talk about one of the best NES games ever made. Mighty Final Fight.
Yes.
It's a great one.
Yes.
We did touch upon it a bit in the Brawler stream last time, but it really stated just how awesome a game that really is.
Oh, yeah. I played through it recently myself after the Brawler stream, and it was just like, wow, this game is so good. I'd almost forgotten. And I picked Guy because, well, it's Guy. You know, I never pick Hagar. I rarely pick Cody, but Guy is my go-to character, just like it is for Prime.
Well,
So
obviously, you didn't play the druggy Final Fight hack.
Oh no.
I haven't.
I'm
but
gonna
I
shut up
could if
about
I
that. I-
wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Kate, you
I-
have any thoughts on Mighty Final Fight?
I have not played it, so I'll pass this.
Add that to your list then.
Okay, I will.
All right, Mike.
For a long time, I thought the best beat 'em up on the NES was Double Dragon 2, and it is still quite a good one. But Mighty Final Fight does not have Stage 7. Stage 7 in Double Dragon 2 is very terrible, and requires you to rely on platforming with the game's somewhat slowish controls, and I hate it. Mighty Final Fight doesn't have anything like that, and it is thus a superior game. But it also helps that the game also has a lot of charm and surprisingly gets the personality of the main trio and all the Mad Gears down pretty well pat. For some reason, instead of making the Mad Gear boss Belger wheelchair-bound Amish beard man with an automatic crossbow, he was made a half cyborg for some reason in this game, and I don't know why they did that, but screw it, I'm here for it. It's just a really nice, fun Gonzo game, and I like how it has a little bit of an experience system to it, where your guys actually get stronger, not just for beating up enemies, but finishing them off with certain moves actually gives you more points. So if you catch them with like a throw instead of just like a jab in your combo, you get more points for that, and that causes you to be more, strategic and like chip their life down enough so you can set them up to get knocked out by a grab attack and get more points off it, which I thought was a really neat tactical bonus that I haven't really seen in other beat 'em ups of that type. And yeah, it's just a really neato game on its own merits. It's an excellent Final Fight game. It's much better than the SNES port of Final Fight, which I still say is one of the worst hack jobs of the era.
I agree.
It was a
Yeah,
rush
I
job,
think
actually,
it's-
more than anything else.
Yeah, rush and or hack and or slash.
Oh my god.
Say, yeah, a little nod to Brawl Brothers there, but I
shouldn't
would
be.
say that I think I might even like Mighty Final Fight more than Final Fight 2. It's just such a more bouncy and colorful game. It's tops. Better than Final Fight 3 though. I don't know. FF3 is really freaking good, but
Three is.
it's
But-
up there. They're among the best of the series, I would say. So.
I should have expected a giant dissertation on the Final Fight series from you.
Yeah.
Hey, we already did this.
Exactly. I mean, Prime's here as well. I just wanted to look good in front of him.
All right. So speaking of which, he just commented actually. Mighty Final Fight, love that game. So let's steer away from Mike before he starts talking about Final Fight Streetwise or something like that. And
Never played it.
All right. Well, I very very much love Mighty Final Fight. I think it's just adorable and charming as all heck. I think it's such a quality and charming game. One of Capcom's very best. The graphics are excellent. The soundtrack's so good. Really big fan of the two composers for it as well. Setsuo Yamamoto and Yuko Takehara. I believe they also composed for Mega Man 6, which I think has a bit of an underrated soundtrack for
Absolutely.
the series of the Mega Man games. That's a whole other thing. Anyways, Mighty Final Fight's just, I love it. The gameplay design is so clever, especially for a beat 'em up. Like, what do we do for this 8-bit beat 'em up? Let's do this. It's like, heck yeah. So good. I'm very puzzled by this though. This one decision they allowed. It's like, okay, I know this goes with a whole bunch of political talk. I'm gonna try not to bring it up, but like, I think it's interesting that for the Super Nintendo North American version of Final Fight, they removed Poison and Roxy for the whole like violence against women thing. Yet in Mighty Final Fight, Poison is an enemy in Mighty Final Fight, and you can like beat her up and everything. So it's like, okay, so violence against women is bad, but if it's done in like cutesy chibi style, it's okay.
Perfectly
Like,
fine.
That's a bizarre loophole.
I think you got some explaining to do there, Nintendo and Capcom. That's kind of sus. Not gonna lie. I don't know if I'm okay with that.
Well,
But also,
it was a
Oh,
late
sorry.
release after the Super
Yes.
had come out, so maybe it just kind of flew under the radar.
but it's also like, okay, this sounds so horrible. I'm probably gonna sound like the most twisted person out of this entire conversation, but when you knock Poison down, she makes the cutest face. She has this, and it's very anime, like it's very Japanese anime. She has this giant X on her face as like she's fainted, and it's just, what the hell? Just a giant X on her face. Like, I love that. That's one of my favorite like cartoon like things ever, like in a cartoon or an anime or whatever. It's just a giant X on your face. That's how you know you're defeated. Just X on your face. Just bleh.
Exactly.
I love Mighty Final Fight so much. All the characters play differently from one another. They're all unique, fun, satisfying moves. I love Cody when you level him up a couple levels. He gets like a little Hadoken. You just have to mash the D-pad with your attack. If you're facing left, you mash left. If you're facing right, you mash right, and you hit the button, and he shoots a little shot, a power shot, a little Hadoken-like thing, and very charming. I know Guy has a little rapid kick thing he does for his little D-pad thing, and Hagar has a charge, and just really charming stuff. And I once again have to give a shout out to the soundtrack to the game. There's some really catchy, just as you can probably tell by now, I love video game music, but like, man, Mighty Final Fight, there's some seriously memorable catchy tunes.
There
Just
are.
really charming.
Old bangers.
So, we only have a couple SD games left to cover before we get into our final segment. So, let's go ahead and cover a couple of shooters real quick. Gunneck and Star Parodier.
Okay.
Gunneck is fantastic. Star Parodier is also great. I love the fact that in Star Parodier you can actually play as a PC Engine or Bomberman.
Yep.
And
Yep.
when you're the PC Engine, the controllers are shields, and you shoot CDs, and you even get an AV booster on it at one point. It's just great.
It's been a long time since I played Star Parodier, but it is a very worthy entry in the Star Soldier series, which was absolutely at its peak on the PC Engine. But I don't want to steal Kyle or Kate's thunder by going first, as I'm technically the middle one of the round robin. So
Right.
You can go ahead. I haven't played either of these.
okay.
Okay, you need to add those to your list too.
I will.
They're great.
Oh my goodness, Kate! I can't wait to hear your thoughts on all these games. Just
Sure.
Yeah.
when you finally play them, I'm so excited.
It's okay.
All right.
And we're gonna be getting into more of your turf soon. So,
Okay.
but Mike, you have anything else to say about either of those? You haven't touched on Gunneck yet.
Gunneck is, the idea of Compile making a relative cute 'em up is just mind-blowingly amazing. Its cute uppiness is a little bit downplayed, I find, compared to other such games. Like, if you look at it from a distance, it still does look like, one of the Aleste games or what have you. Although you look closer, and then the first boss is a giant robotic bunny on the moon, of course. I forget how that Japanese myth works out, but it's a running thing. Parodius even had a nod to that.
Yeah.
But, and then you have the shop with the very perky clerk who looks a little bit too enthusiastic and or drugged out whenever you get onto the screen. But, Gunneck's just really solid. Aside from the quirkier boss designs, like there's one of those lucky cats.
Hell yeah,
You've seen him in other games like Goemon, for example, and
Did somebody say Goemon?
yes. Unfortunately, I think that series is somewhat SD-ish, but I'm not sure if it qualifies for a discussion. That would be definitely.
Oh, I know, but that's just one of my lifebloods is Goemon.
Very
Pretty
good.
cool.
It's
Very
cute, but I think I'll save that for a future stream.
No, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
of course.
But and the Hanawa dolls, those weird, creepy, flat-eyed things. I believe that is another boss at some point. Like I said, its cuteness is downplayed, but it is still really It has a bit more bounce in it than other shoot 'em ups in the NES, and it's just really darn solid. Same thing for Star Parodier, which you get to choose the classic Star Parodier ship, but it looks cuter, and you can also choose a PC Engine as a selectable character. And the third character is just straight up Bomberman, which is quite amazing. In fact, the Black Bomberman is even one of the bosses. He's giant, but he fights exactly like Bomberman does, which is quite a rad touch, if I do say so. Very, very nice and colorful game, and it's maybe not quite as great as Soldier Blade, but it is still really darn good, and I highly recommend it. I see we have Bomberman on our list, but I guess we're not going to get to that tonight.
If we have time at the end, we can.
Okay.
But I'd like to move on to Kyle now so we can finish up
Yes.
the SD games and move on to the licensed games.
I understand if we can't make it to Bomberman, but I do have a bit of a childhood story with Bomberman. I hope I can share. But anyways, so Gunneck and Star Parodier, Compile shmups are excellent. Just in general, like they've made so many good shmups. So many really solid, just energetic, fun, just games. Great graphics, especially for Gunneck. Really impressive graphics for the NES. Amazed so much stuff can be on screen without like flickering too much. But Gunneck's really good, really solid little game. I'll also and Star Parodier. One of my favorite things about that game, another just moment of cuteness, is being able to play as the PC Engine itself, and it shoots CDs and uses the controllers as shields. Like, I love that so much. That's so cute. That's oh my goodness. And then like the PC Engine character has like little feet, and oh my god, little feet. And just I love that so much that you can play as the console itself, and you can play as Bomberman, and that's adorable. And just great games. Very adorable, great games.
Yeah, they are. I actually stumbled across Gunneck back in the mid-'90s at a Kmart when they were actually carrying used games. And I remember reading about this. It's related to Xanac. So I picked it up, brought it home, played the hell out of it. It was great. Star Predator didn't get to play until years later, but I already expressed my thoughts on that earlier. But, okay, we're going to hit the black sheep of the SD games now. This is the final one we're doing. Sid of Valis, or Valis
Nope.
SD. Nope,
Nope.
sorry, Mike, we're covering it because it's Valis.
Well, I ain't saying nothing, so pipe it. Also, I haven't played it very much, so I really can't say much after all.
Well, I beat it.
Nice.
Shoot.
So what'd you think?
I played through it last year at some point, and I mean, I wouldn't consider it a great or even a good game by any means. Maybe not even decent, but I didn't actually hate it quite as much as I was expecting to. I actually thought it had some neat ideas. I do appreciate that, unlike in the more mainline games, you can actually shoot upward with your sword laser thing. And I think the equipment system is kind of neat. Like, as you go through the game and defeat bosses, your character levels up and gets new outfits. And some of the outfits are pretty cute. And each outfit has different stats, and you can also customize what type of shot, like whether you want to use a spread shot or a homing shot or whatnot that you want to shoot out of your sword. And I feel like it has some cool ideas, and the art style itself is very cute. I just wish that it was better programmed and that it didn't feel like the physics are very weird. It's the kind of game where if you tap right or left a little bit, then you go a little bit in that direction. But if you hold it down, then you zoom like several screens forward. It's like the devs didn't really understand how to make solid physics. It's very, very weird.
Yeah, that's always been my biggest issue with the game is just how slippery the controls felt. And I see we have Tim here in the chat. Welcome. Glad you could join us. But yeah, I mean, I like the game enough as it's a retelling of Alice 2, but it's just it's cute. It's Valis. I kind of like it by default. The only ones I don't like are Valis X, which we will not talk about, or Valis Cross, whatever, however you call it. We're not gonna bring that up.
That game doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. But you know, I'd certainly rather play Valis SD than that pile of crap. So, since Mike's not going to talk about it, let's go on to Kyle.
Well, I will say one thing before Kyle is sorry. I think my bugbear against Sid of Valis is that we got it instead of an actual port of Valis 2 to the Genesis, and it irritates me that this is the version of Valis 2 that we have to sell for when 1 and 3 is right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you wanted to be cheeky about it, you could say that, you know, this did what SMB 2 or Castlevania 2 or Zelda 2 did, but, like, I just wonder why we didn't get the actual Valis 2 on Genesis, and that they this should have been like, I don't know, a Sega Master System game or something. It's just weird. It sets off my OCD that we don't have this next to the more serious Valis games. I mean, I kind of like its style, but yeah,
I get what you mean.
Well,
yeah, so you understand.
Don't forget
That's all.
They also sent Valis 4 to the Super NES instead of putting it on the Genesis.
Oh yeah, that
How
was a
odd.
weird move. That was a weird move, also, right?
Yeah.
Just a very weird series overall. Let's be real.
I feel like they might have done that because the Super Famicom did better than the Mega Drive in Japan.
Yeah, that could be. After
Yeah.
all, the 3 Valis games that came out for the Mega Drive came out before the Super Famicom was even released. So.
Oh yeah.
But all right, Kyle.
Wait, even Valis 3, really?
Yeah, even Valis 3.
Wow, that's early. Holy crap.
My goodness.
Yes. I'm really terrible at this game. Like, I don't know, like it just the running around and shooting and like the controls are so odd and like just so flingy and slippery and odd. I do like it though. I think it's very cutesy. I think it's very cute. I love how you can choose Yuko's outfit. I love that. I love that.
Yes.
That's very charming. You can just like put her in her school outfit. You can put her in a dress. You can put her in her battle outfit. Like that's hell yeah. That's so charming. Just thumbs up.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
Thumbs up. Really, really charming stuff. I wish I were better at the game. It's the physics of the game feel a little odd, but I don't know. Like I feel like there's some charm in it.
Oh, definitely. All right, so let's hit our last category now, which is licensed games. Let's kick it off with a game I have never played, let alone even heard of, before we came up with the idea of doing this stream. And Kate, you can kick this off with telling me all about Tetris with Cardcaptor Sakura.
Sure. So this is the reason why I picked my avatar. Um, Basically, I really like Cardcaptor Sakura a whole bunch. It's my favorite anime series by far. I've been a fan since I was like 10 years old, and it's incredibly cute and adorable. Plus, there's actually several different video game tie-ins with it. I happened to recently try out Tetris with Cardcaptor Sakura recently, and I found it to be a fun time, so I figured I'd go with something connected to that game in some way. As for the game itself, um, it's a Tetris game with the Cardcaptor Sakura license, which was released on the original PlayStation in 2000. I'm personally not a huge fan of Tetris in general. Like, I enjoy it, but I wouldn't consider it my favorite game of all time or anything. But I do rather enjoy this particular take on the Tetris formula. The core Tetris mechanics are in there, of course. And in addition, there are multiple magical abilities that can affect the playfield in various ways, whether by making the blocks temporarily invisible, or by causing the entire playfield to flip horizontally or vertically, etc. These magic effects are generally based on the cloud cards that Sakura captures in the series, and I found their incorporation into this game's mechanics to be pretty clever. It definitely keeps you on your toes as you play. There's two main modes of play. There's the story mode, which consists of a set of predetermined puzzles that you have to solve by clearing every single gem off the screen for each card that you need to capture, like one card per stage. And the other mode is a more open-ended battle mode of sorts, where you and the other player select a character to play as, and your chosen character affects what abilities you have on hand. Each character has an elaborate set of sprite-based animations that they cycle through as you play, which made it pretty enjoyable to watch as a fan of the show. And interestingly, the way that difficulties are handled in story mode is rather unusual. So easy mode is pretty straightforward, with both easy puzzles and a unique time limit for every stage. Normal mode, however, has more challenging puzzles, which in and of itself isn't too surprising, but in addition, they have a global 20-minute time limit. If, for example, you finish stage 1 while taking 2 minutes to clear it, then you'll start stage 2 with 18 minutes left on your timer, and then if you take 3 minutes to clear stage 2, then you'll start stage 3 with 15 minutes left on your timer, etc. And that means that you will likely inevitably have to go back and redo a previous stage, trying to beat it in a shorter period of time. Since when you replay a previous stage and get a better time, that adds time back to your global timer. So you're basically piecing together your way through to reaching the final stages. It's pretty demanding.
Interesting. I am a pretty big Tetris fan, although I'm more of a Bombalist guy than anything else. But yeah, I'm not even sure what this is available for. I haven't looked it up.
Yeah, it's for the original PlayStation. It unfortunately does not have a translation patch, but hopefully one can appear for it someday. There is a guide online which helps, but it's still... Like, I've studied some Japanese, but I'm not 100% fluent, so I'm not always sure what a menu option is for or whatnot.
I've run into that problem before.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, you did mention. I thought you were just talking about like the version of Tetris it was based on for the PlayStation originally, but this was a PlayStation original.
Yeah, it came out on the platform
Okay. I may have to look that up then.
for sure.
Mike or Kyle, have either of you played this one?
Yes, I have. I think it's very nice. I'm a big fan of the developer of it, Arika, and their Tetris games. They're very intense. Big fan of Arika, and also, I'm a huge fan as well of Cardcaptor Sakura.
Yes.
Great,
Oh my gosh.
really great anime series. I'm a big anime nerd, so excuse me. Just really charming series. I think it's such a nice little show series. I think it's just a really solid thing you can just show kids. Like it's yeah, just a really nice series. Great writing, great animation. I'm a big fan of the anime director of that series and the studio Madhouse. Yeah, just good stuff. Big fan of both those things.
Nice. How about you, Mike?
Totally.
Contrary to the rest of you, my anime knowledge sucks, and I haven't seen a single second of Cardcaptor Sakura, so... The only Clamp series I have seen, and actually in full, is Holic, which I think has a vague relation to Cardcaptor Sakura somehow. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, actually it does.
Cool. And that is actually quite a good series. But, the actual Cardcaptor Sakura itself, I got nothing, so I'm just going to stop here. I'm sorry.
Me either, actually.
That's fair.
I've never seen a single minute of the series myself.
Fair enough. I'm sure it's good, though. Song apparently is familiar with it and likes it, so I'll get on sometime.
All right, two things before we move on to the next one. First, my sister showed up in the chat, so everybody say hi, Sharon.
Hey, Sharon.
Hello, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
And also on the subject of, and I could never figure out how to pronounce it, Arika, something like that.
Arika,
yeah. I will say that one of the cutest games I ever played for the PlayStation 2 was Technic Beat.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
I love the fact there's all those Namco songs in that too. Even that.
Oh, that's so good.
That brutal Splatterhouse remix is in there. The digital hardcore mix.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I love playing the Toy Pop theme one though. That's just great.
Oh, it's so cute.
That
I love Toy Pop. I'm actually a little surprised we didn't bring up Toy Pop in this because I love Toy Pop. That's one of my favorite Namco games.
Yeah, we should have.
Definitely the most underrated cut on the first Namco Museum on the PS1.
Agreed. It's like Gauntlet in a toy box.
Yeah.
But
and also, Pino and Akka are going to Majo's castle to save Friend.
That they are. So, since we're dealing with licensed stuff here, I think the next one we need to touch on is the Sanrio games. So, of course, I have to lead this off with a bit of a story about the first two Hello Kitty games from the Famicom. Mike knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I was holding... go ahead.
Oh, my.
Oh, my goodness.
And this does relate to Splatterhouse, actually. Okay, back before I launched West Mansion, the game that actually got me started at was One Pocket Graffiti. And I had managed to score it on eBay. For a pretty decent price, it was complete, box, stickers, everything. So, I paid, and I got the tracking information, and when I got the notification it was delivered, I went out to my mailbox, opened the box, which seemed kind of big for one little Famicom game. So, I popped it open, and two games came out. Hello Kitty World and Hello Kitty's Flower Shop. And
Oh, no.
I was furious. I thought I'd been bait and switched. I went off on a rant. My ex-wife was there at the time, and this is one of the few times I'd lost my cool over something relatively insignificant. But I just kept going. It's like I got sent Hello Kitty games. Hello fucking Kitty games. And I was,
oh my god!
as soon as I got to a computer, I immediately dashed off a message to the seller. And it turns out what had happened was their partner had mislabeled the games. Those two games were supposed to go to a lady who bought them for her daughters. So imagine her shock when she opened up her box and saw Splatterhouse.
Oh no.
Oof.
They put me in contact with her. We worked out an arrangement, and she got her Hello Kitty games in the end. I got my Splatterhouse.
Yay!
Many years later, I ended up buying both games for my girls because they liked Hello Kitty. And I was like, well, you're going to like this. Oh, man. I should put that on a t-shirt.
That's wonderful.
But, you know, I've actually gotten to be quite a big fan of Hello Kitty World. It's Balloon Trip, basically.
Yep.
In fact, I actually, when I was still playing videos on stream, I actually did that for the Halloween stream I did. Completely confused everybody.
Yeah.
And Hello Kitty's flower shop is actually pretty neat, too. If nothing else but for the fact that Hello Kitty carries around a big Horkin mallet that she can go ahead and whack things on the head with. And granted, you sit there and you water the plants, but if something comes near you, you whip out that mallet and boom! It's like, take that. So, has anyone else here played either of these Hello Kitty games?
I have
have.
not.
Add those to your list too, Kate.
All right, I will do that.
I have played the balloon fight-esque one, and it is pretty neat. I don't remember much about it, and I don't have much to say about it, and I don't have much to say about Hello Kitty, and I don't have much to say about Sanrio in general, except to hear Agretsuko is very great, but I haven't seen much of it. But that's all I have for now. I'm sorry.
All right, then how about you, Cal?
I have played all those games, and I think they're all really damn good, really charming games. The Balloon Trip one is blast. That flower shop one is so cute. Actually, speaking of Hello Kitty and Sanrio in general as a corporation, I'm also a big fan of some of the frog character of Sanrio as games for the Famicom.
Yeah.
Kedopi.
That's
Kedo,
nice.
Kedopi. And I'm a big fan of this one. I can't remember. It was only released in Japan, but I can't remember the name of it. But it's like Kedopi water balloon something, and it's basically Bomberman, but you plant like bombs, but they're water balloons and they explode full of water and they can't hurt you. And it's a really charming game for the Famicom. And it's just like you're Canopy and you plant bombs to defeat enemies. You plant these little water balloon bombs and they explode. And like even if you get caught in the blast, the water doesn't hurt you. So I'm like, that's brilliant. It's Bomberman, except you can't die like from your own explosion. That's so good.
I think I actually played
And
that
also,
one once.
just as I was finishing my sentence, I bit my tongue accidentally. So hooray!
Oh, no.
Ouch.
Owie.
Sorry
Yeah.
about
That's fine.
Feel
Still
better.
that.
Thank you. But yeah, a really charming game. Just like a really cutesy-fied, like almost for young children designed idea for Bomberman. Like that's brilliant. I love it.
That is a good idea. Yeah, so let's switch tracks and go to something that was, as far as I know, pretty much an American phenomenon, but did show up in Japan. It was all over the place in the early 80s. You couldn't get away from it. If you were a boy, usually you avoided it, but, you know, every girl had to have one. And there was a game based on them. They were the Cabbage Patch Kids. And the game was called Cabbage
Nice.
Patch Kids Adventures in the Park. Kate, how about you kick this one off?
Sure. So, Cabbage Patch Kids Adventures in the Park is basically a Pitfall-esque platformer for the ColecoVision, which was released in 1984, and it was, as said, based on Cabbage Patch Kids. I never had any interest in Cabbage Patch Kids myself, but I think the game itself is pretty cute. It's an early Konami game, and it has a similar kind of cute vibe to it as some other like Konami arcade games of the time, such as Frogger or Circus Charlie. Unlike Pitfall, though, this is split up into distinct stages instead of throwing you in a giant sandbox world. There will basically be like sets of rooms in each stage where sometimes there'll be no enemies or obstacles, but other times there'll be like a beam that flies at you or a bouncing ball that you have to jump over. And sometimes there'll be like a forest road which has a bunch of different pitfalls that have like rising platforms that you have to jump between. And this is an early platformer, so that means that if you fall from too high a height, then you lose a life. So you gotta be careful with that platforming. And yeah, I think it's a pretty charming game. I rather adore it.
Nice. I know I've played it myself. I think Konami actually released a licenseless version in Japan for the MSX.
Oh, nice.
Can't recall the name off the top of my head, but yeah.
I knew there was an MSX version, but I did not know that it had the license removed.
Yeah, it was one of those games that you know how like Sega did Buck Rogers and Planet of Zoom, but over in Japan it was released as Zoom 909. That kind of
Okay.
thing. But I've played it before and it's pretty fun, even though I couldn't stand Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yeah.
But Mike, either you or Kyle, have you guys played this game?
I have.
What do you think?
I've played the MSX version, and I played, I think, a little bit of the ColecoVision version. Excuse me. Yeah, really charming game. Really nice, especially for its time. Just a super cute little platformer. I like the music. The music's very perky, and I love that you're just sort of walking along trying to jump over things. Yeah, really charming game. Really good stuff. It feels along the lines of like the Pitfall game, the first two Pitfalls, and yeah, just really nice game. I really like it.
Yeah, it's a good one. Mike, how about you?
I really suck at the license portion of this stream. I got nothing. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I just knew that the Cabbage Patch Kids got a lot of commercials back in the day, but
Oh, did they ever?
they never really appealed to me. I wasn't even all that familiar with the Garbage Pail Kids, so this is just a huge blind spot of pop culture for me, and I can't really say anything. So
I
sorry.
collected the
It's all
cards.
good.
I collected the Garbage Pail Kids cards, and I actually have a story about that, which I'm kind of tempted to tell now, but not because it's actually showing up in one of my upcoming books. But I'll give you the 25-cent tour version. Basically, my brother had a substantial collection of Garbage Pail Kids cards and traded them all away for. Actually, no, he didn't trade them away. He traded his GI Joes for a bunch of other ones from a friend of his. My parents, having spent a ton of money on GI Joes, hit the roof, demanded he return them, get his Joes back, and confiscated all of his other cards and presumably threw them in the trash. But that wasn't enough. No, they also demanded my cards. They didn't want them in the house at all.
Oh no.
So I reluctantly gave them my deck, but I slipped a couple out and saved them until my ex-wife tossed them. It's a sordid story there. But to this day, though, I actually have a little vinyl representation of JDK, my favorite Garbage Pail Kid. Thanks to Betty. But so, you know, being that Mike has nothing to say about any of that, let's move on to something Kyle reminded me of. Has anyone played the Smurf games?
Yes, I have.
Wow, yeah.
Okay. Now, I have really only played one. I've messed around with a couple of the later ones, but I actually own Smurf for the 2600, which is basically just go to the right, jump over tufts of grass that'll kill you, or fences, or dodge the spider, that kind of thing. And apparently in the ColecoVision version of Smurfs, there's some kind of a thing you get which will cause a glitch that'll cause Smurfette's dress to come off.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
But
Classic.
Kate, what do you think?
I played Smurf Rescue and Gargamel's Castle for the ColecoVision as a kid, and I remember my family and I would take turns playing it, and I had really fond memories of playing it, and it's a very early attempt at a platformer since it doesn't actually have any button usage. instead to jump, you press up, but you're basically jumping from a standstill, and that causes you to jump forward a little bit. And if you jump again in succession, then you do a super jump. It's very odd and unusual. And I replayed it a few years ago for the podcast, and unfortunately, I kind of didn't like it as much as I remembered liking it. Like, I still think it has some positive aspects going for it in terms of its technical design and presentation. It's very impressive. It looks very good. It's definitely one of the better looking ColecoVision games, but it's just unfortunate that the game itself kind of falls apart in the later difficulties when you have tons of enemies that you're having to deal with while handling that control scheme. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about it.
Okay, Mike. How about Smurfs?
This is starting to feel like a prank against me. You guys keep covering series I know dick nothing about, and you're just
fell
leaving me
earlier.
on one leg to stand on. What's up with this?
We switched places.
That being said, well, fair enough.
Oh, we're
That
coming
being
to you
said,
soon, Mike.
okay, cool. That being said, I think I have at least played a bit of the Smurfs NES game, which was made by the... They sure were a company, Infogram, who seemed to, for some reason, have a almost universal monopoly on games based on Belgian comic properties, which Smurfs is, which is something I had no idea of as a kid, actually. But the NES game is perfectly cromulent, at least. It's certainly an NES platformer, although... Okay, this part I don't remember. I'm looking at a video, and there's one part that's just riding down a river instead. I absolutely do not remember this. Maybe I didn't play it very far. All I can say, though, about the game is that the soundtrack is really darn good. Infogram's music man, Alberto Jose Gonzalez, aka Joe McAlby, he is absolutely their star player, and his music is just sublime. I mean, he does a great rendition of the Smurfs theme itself on the title screen, but like, wait until you get to the swamps. It's a surprisingly sinister sounding little tune that really sets the mood for how dreary an area you'd expect swamps to be in a game like this. But yeah, not a bad game, but the soundtrack definitely elevates it. Other than that, I don't really have much to say about Smurfs other than I knew Rob would talk about the nude Smurfette thing because he's a big old horn dog.
Oh my god. Mr. Boobface.
Guilty as charged. All right, Kyle, how about you and Smurfs?
I have played the Smurfs games on Coleco. Cutesy game, really nice. Nice little platformer, especially for its time and era. Something that I always found interesting is the jumping sound you make in that game, the specific Coleco game. Like, it's this really high-pitched, like, sound, and it's just, I don't know, like, it's just, I don't always think about it, but, like, I often think about it, just that sound. It's very very specific to me. I have played a couple of the other Smurf games that Mike has been talking about, and yes, they are both a lot of them are pretty decent games as well. And Alberto J. Gonzalez, great composer. Lot of catchy tunes as well. But yeah, that's pretty much me on the Smurfs on Coleco and some of the other future Smurf games.
Well, I think we've basically run the Smurfs into the ground at this point. So let's hit up something a little more Japanese. I don't remember how it goes, but I'll just say it outright. Sailor Moon. There was a series of brawlers that were...
I give off! I don't know anything about any of these! God!
Oh my god, Mike!
Oh.
Okay, well, I have played the arcade...
Down, Mike?
I have played the arcade Sailor Moon game. It's pretty good. It's not my favorite beat 'em up. It has some pretty cool animations. That's all I got. Go on.
Well, I can tell you, when my girls were much younger, I ended up getting a hold of Sailor Moon R for the Super Famicom. And aside from having some of the most boring music I've ever heard in a brawler, it was actually really solid. They loved it.
Oh yeah.
I myself actually really loved the Mega Drive version. It's a great game.
Mm.
Yeah, you might not think that. I know a lot of people who Sailor Moon, that can't be a good game, but it is. So.
No, those Sailor Moon games are like awesome. Like just, and I love the idea that like this like girl series, like a series about girls. What? Like we gotta make it very girly and all this other gender bullshit. But like, sorry, pardon my French. But like, no. Like let's make a beat 'em up with these girl characters. Like hell yeah, that's awesome.
It works. I never followed the anime or anything, so I don't get much of the backstory, but I can certainly follow along in the game.
Oh hell yeah, they're really good. I really love them.
So, how about you, Kate?
I watched a little bit of Sailor Moon. As far as magical girl stuff goes, I never was as into it as Cardcaptor Sakura, but I watched the first 2 seasons of the anime, and the second one, Sailor Moon R, had a video game based on it, Sailor Moon R, which was like a Super Famicom beat 'em up.
Yep.
And that was actually the second video game that I ever imported in my life. I imported that at some point in high school, and I ended up eventually beating it. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of it. Like, it's not a terrible game by any means. It's solid enough, but I feel like it's a little bit slow and a bit underwhelming as far as beat 'em ups go. It's I just wish that it was a bit more intense and challenging, and that there was more going on with it.
Just to interject, I think the music contributes a bit to that because it is some of the most snore-inducing music I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because the anime itself actually had some pretty amazing music, but a lot of the music in the Super Famicom game sounds like something you would hear like when like a cartoon character is going to sleep and they're playing that over you beating up aliens or whatever.
Exactly. But for the most part, I played a couple of the other ones. There's a couple of puzzle games, and there was the original Sailor Moon Brawler on the Super Famicom, which, as I understand, is a lot like the Mega Drive game, but different or something. But it's all pretty good stuff. I haven't really had a complaint with it, any of it, except for that snore-inducing soundtrack.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, well, I guess I have one thing to say about Sailor Moon. I'm kind of partial to Sailor Jupiter. She's
Jupiter!
She's one of those boom anime babes that make me think the wrong thing. How can I help it? Think it's funny when you're mad, trying hard not to smile though I feel bad. I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral, can't understand what I mean. I'm sorry, I'm probably insulting Kyle majorly.
He calls me a horn dog.
I just wanted to make the bare naked ladies reference and make everyone very embarrassed to be associated with me. That's my goal.
Dang it, Mike, you just had to. So now I only have to say, that's all I'll say.
I think Sailor Venus was probably my favorite.
Harrison Ford. Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
I think Sailor Venus was probably my favorite of the Sailor Scouts.
Venus rules.
Yeah.
Jupiter's my favorite, but Venus is also super cool.
I have no favorite because, like I said, I don't really know much of the anime. I just pick one at random usually and go when I play the game.
Oh, cool.
All right, Mike, your time to shine in the license department has finally come.
I sure hope so.
Let's talk Little Nemo.
You're putting the spotlight on me, and while I have played both of these games, I don't really know as much about Little Nemo as you think I would.
But you know more about it than the other ones.
I suppose, I guess.
You've at least played the games.
Yeah, there is that. Well, again, I'm in the middle of this round robin, so if Kyle or Kate want to go first,
I know absolutely nothing about Little Nemo.
Okay. Well,
I'm gonna say
Kyle?
you should try the arcade game. You can try the NES game. It's not a favorite of mine at all, but the
I
arcade game
see.
rocks.
Good to know.
I would honestly say neither are major favorites of mine. The arcade game is pretty neat. Graphics look good, running on that CPS1 engine. Of course, it looks and sounds great. I don't know. Of the action games that Capcom made around the time, something about it just feels like a slightly less good Midnight Wanderers to me. Now, Midnight Wanderers I flippin' love.
That's a good game.
One part of the Three Wonders trilogy, which definitely look that up if you haven't played it. Did have some pretty neat boss designs, like this one evil tree and this one gigantic blob who actually looked a lot like the second boss from Gradius 3, now that I think about it. But, it's alright. It's not my favorite. That's what I think about the NES game as well. A lot of people love Little Nemo in the NES. I've never really dug it up. Yeah, I mean, I think the transforming gimmick is pretty neat, but the fact you don't have an actual weapon until the last couple until the last stage is, I don't know. I'm not so hot on it. I don't like platformers where you have to avoid enemies and you have no options for actually defeating them. So, also when you think about it, the premise of Nemo drugging animals with candy and then wearing their skin is kind of really fucked up. So I don't know who sanctioned this game now that I think about it. It's got some pretty neat ideas, but I don't know. I think having to scan for all the keys in the levels just kind of feels a bit like work. I think last time I tried to stream the game, I actually was missing a key in the first freaking level, which was really embarrassing. So that and stage 3 is an auto-scrolling gauntlet that takes place on a train. You are beset by many balloons carrying bombs and many fighter planes trying to run into you, and this level freaking blows, and I hate it, and it kind of makes me not want to play the rest of the game whenever I think about replaying the game. So, I mean, Little Nemo is alright. It's still pretty quality as you would expect Capcom's games to be, at least the ones that weren't farmed out to Micronix. But it's far from my favorite that they've done, and that's on the NES alone.
Yeah.
Let us never utter the word, never utter Micronix ever again. They are a cursed.
Let's
cursed
not. No,
villain.
they're terrible. No, I agree. My apologies for even bringing them up. They don't exist. They're like the dark side of Tosa. No, that's insulting to Tosa. Never mind.
Tosa has actually made genuinely great games. You take that back.
Yes. I don't know why so many people are down on them once they've been exposed. They're a contract developer. They do what they're told, whether or not it's a
games.
good thing. Yeah. Yes, they gave us the Starfy series, and that's something I could qualify for cute games, even though I haven't played very much of them. But Starfy's pretty neat from what I remember.
All right, Kyle, you have anything to say about Little Nemo?
Yes, I do. I mostly enjoyed the NES game. I think it's very flawed, but I enjoy it. I love the soundtrack for that game. Lots of really nice, really well composed Capcom tunes. I'm especially a fan of one particular tune, the Night Sea level. That song is beautiful. That's a really nice song. It just sounds so uplifting. Like just the little like, not chorus, but just that's singing, but there's this melody in it that just it's so nice. It really lifts me up. I love the Night Sea stage music. But yeah, the NES game has a really, really damn good soundtrack. I think the game itself is really flawed. A little unfairly hard at times, unfair. Like, I'm sorry, I know the whole NES games are hard, but nah, this is just unfair. This is unfair. The garden stage with the Flofies is, oh god. Yeah, and the last level being the only level in the game with an actual weapon. The whole thing of the platforming where, like, yeah, you do actually sometimes have to just flat out avoid things. Like, no, that's bad programming. I'm sorry. That's bad game design. I'm just nah. Like Capcom, you know better. This is BS. You really should know better. But yeah, NES game's really flawed, but it's still charming. I think there's some interesting stuff in it, and great soundtrack. Really darn good arcade game. Love the soundtrack to that game too. There's some really catchy music. I love the balloon sky level music. That song's so catchy. But yeah, and really cool game, but also a really good co-op game. Really good 2-player co-op game. If you if you ever have like MAME open and you got a friend over, or you got the arcade cabinet, or like whatever your situation is, great game to just get 2 controllers or 2 joysticks and start playing. It's a fun, really fun little co-op 2-player game.
Yeah, as for me,
I'm sorry, and just one last thing.
Right.
I also am a big fan of the Little Nemo movie. Nice little animated movie.
The movie is good.
Tokyo Movie Shinsha is never done me wrong.
Yeah, I vaguely remember seeing that a long time ago, or at least part of it. It seemed really neat, yeah. I'll have to get back on it someday.
Yeah, as far as me, like I said earlier, I'm not a fan of the NES game. I just didn't dig the mechanics or anything like that. I mean, it looks nice, sounds great, but it just did not appeal to me. So years later, I end up finding out about the arcade game, and I play through it on MAME, and I'm just like, wow, how come we got that thing for the NES and not ported? How come this never been ported anywhere? You know, it's like the Willow arcade game.
It seemed like both of those should have been ported to the Genesis
at least. But it's
I actually really like the Willow NES game, though.
The Willow NES game is actually decent if you're into, like, Zelda-likes. But
it is good, yeah. Although last time I played it, I actually got really tired. So I don't know how that happened. It's a good game. I just need to put more work into it.
I've always been more of an action platform kind of guy, so the arcade game for both of those is definitely more my cup of tea. All right, so
I love action platformers.
Yeah, there's some good stuff.
No one of my favorites.
All right, so we're gonna wrap things up here shortly because it's getting close to midnight on my end. But Kyle, you said you had a Bomberman story you wanted to tell.
Well, this actually goes along with a couple other certain cute game franchises like Bomberman, Bonk, and a few other miscellaneous.
Bonk.
Bonk is so valid.
Yeah, with and a few other miscellaneous little video game franchisey characters. Not to get too much into it, I don't. Once again, I don't want to make anything, quote unquote political, but so as someone in my particular gender as a man, I grew up as a little girl. I am a transgender person. So, as a kid, my mom wasn't too like gender specific or forceful or anything. There were a couple things where she'd be like, "Oh, well, don't you want to like the girly thing, or wear a dress or whatever?" But it was actually pretty rare that she would ever be that way. But one of the things she would get a little gender specific on is video games. She never forbade me or anything. She was perfectly fine with me playing video games. She even played video games herself. So, but one thing that she would try to do though is that whenever we got to go to the video store to rent games, and if I wasn't there, she would try to look out for a game for me to rent. And I wasn't there to pick it out. She would try to pick out stuff that looked like cutesy, and a couple of times that didn't work out so well, unfortunately. But there were a few times where she tried to look out for something cutesy, and it ended up being fantastic. And one of those times were Bomberman and Bonk games, where she's like, "Oh, this looks kind of cute," and she rented it for me, and she brought it home, and I'm like, "What'd you get? And she's like, "Oh, well, I got this. It's called Super Bomberman or Bomberman 64, or this game is called Super Bonk," and I'm like, "Okay," and I play it. I'm like, "This game is awesome! Oh my goodness, I love it!" Just Man. Yeah, just yeah. That's my little story. I just it's such an odd way to discover some of these games, but what a way to discover them.
Yeah.
That's nice. I
Um,
do have
Yeah.
one thing to say about Bomberman.
Good.
Um, this was back when I was a kid before I transitioned myself. One year for Halloween, I actually dressed up as Bomberman, and
Yes!
that was pretty
Oh,
fun.
nice.
Totally.
Now,
Very nice.
as far
And I am. Sorry, Rob.
no, you go ahead, Mike.
I am also a Bomberman fan. Played a lot of Super Bomberman 2 with my brother because, the multiplayer was where it was at, even though the single player campaigns were quite rad. They were also huge party games. He especially loved Level 10, which is the one where you could actually jump, which
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't do in really any other Bomberman games, but just thought that was a neat factor, and it was really fun playing around with that. And I really liked the first Bomberman 64 game as well on the N64. I remember I had to cheat to get into the super final levels because getting 100 cards was beyond my skill level back then. I eventually did it in earnest somehow. I don't know how because it is still really hard, but yeah, I am a longtime Bomberman fan. It's a series that's technically older than Super Mario Brothers, although not
Yeah,
older than
it
the
is.
character of Mario, because of course he debuted in Donkey Kong 2 years
Mhm.
ago. I just want to say, Bomberman Act Zero is one of the worst things since Sliced.
Zero.
Also, I stole the term "slice Hitler" from Ashens. I hate to invoke Godwin's law, but I still find that term
Sliced
absolutely
Hitler.
hilarious.
Good
Yes.
lord.
It is the apotheosis of a game that did not need to be grimdark and completely sucks on every single level, and I think it proves... I think Act Zero's absolute and complete failure just proves why cute games are important, because, a game that's cute doesn't mean a game for kids. Anyone can enjoy it, and I appreciate the fact that they are all ages, that they are games that we could all play and discuss together, and are just so eminently adorable and bubbly and charming. But, even if they weren't cute, they're still solid titles. Act Zero was not only not cute, it just really sucked to play, so...
Yeah.
That actually reminds me of another Bomberman game, which came out in 1997 on PC called Atomic Bomberman.
Oh my goodness,
And
that
the thing is,
game. Oh.
Aesthetically, it has nothing to do with Bomberman in general, but it still has the classic Bomberman gameplay, and
Yes.
it actually has up to 10 players who can play, and I remember having a lot of fun with it, despite how different it was from other Bomberman games.
Yeah, I mostly know Atomic Bomberman for the prolific voice actors Billy West and Charlie Adler having the foul voice lines recorded into the game for some reason.
Oh, I remember that. Something else about Bomberman, just really quick thing. Another cute moment thing that I want to bring up that I'm a big fan of. As of many other cute moments of various video games that we've discussed, with Bomberman, something that I'm a very, 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 very big fan of, and I think is just the cutest thing, is when a Bomberman character, mainly just the Bombermen, the little robots, the main characters, Bomberman, and the specific colors of Bomberman. I love whenever the Bombermen close their eyes and they have little N eyes, their eyes look like the little lowercase N. That's the cutest. That's the cutest face. That's just the cutest face. Once again, another just general little cute thing that I'm a big fan of. And
that's
video games, animation, cartoons, whatever. I love it.
That's their happy face whenever they win in
exactly.
multiplayer rounds in the first two Super Bombermen.
It's so good. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, Bomberman, Kirby, everything else we've talked about, Pac-Man. Yeah, we wanted to get to Bubble Bobble, as Andrew hinted on, but we ran out of time, although I suggested that we do a Taito roundtable in the future. And
oh, heck yeah.
I think Rob's on board for that
Capital
some days. So.
Capital idea, old man.
Yes, quite.
But if for a moment I may be, I'd like to share my own thoughts on Bomberman.
Please do.
It
Sure.
sucks. I'm kidding. No.
I was about to
Oh,
punch
my
you in the
heart!
face over the internet, man. Come on.
Well, here's
That is
the thing.
just like the basest freaking cheap heat you can generate, to borrow wrestling parlance.
Now, here's the thing with me and Bomberman. I played the NES game, and one of the first games I rented after we moved to Florida, and I wasn't really impressed. And a couple of years later, I got a hold of a Turbo Duo. So this would have been about 94, maybe 95. Anyway, it had the disc that came with it that had Bomberman as a hidden game.
Oh yeah.
That's when
I remember
got
that.
it. I
Heck
fell
yeah.
in love with it. I actually beat the game. And to this day, the original PC Engine Bomberman is still my favorite Bomberman game of all time. I haven't played many past the... in fact, I haven't even played many from that era, like the Bomberman 93 and 94 and all that. But I do own a single copy of Bomberman, and it's the PC Engine game.
Good
So,
game.
It is.
Really
There-
good game.
Very solid. It is definitely one of the better treatments of 2D Bomberman, and not like later Bomberman games would go on some crazier elements, but I'd say like that one, Bomberman 2 in the NES, and the first Super Bomberman are probably the ones that are closest to how the original played, but are better than the original. Honestly, the original is kind of hard to go back to. It is really lacking in bells and whistles that
I think
later
it's
titles brought
Bomberman
in.
in its purest form, though.
Oh yeah.
Yes, no, I'd absolutely agree.
But on a Bomberman-related note, I just want to wax nostalgia for a second about Robo Warrior.
Hey, a childhood favorite.
Mm-hmm. I actually had gotten hold of that for the NES. There was a girl I knew in school, and I offered a trade. I would trade her my basically brand new Back to the Future for Robo Warrior. She accepted
Nice.
it, and I got that. God, Back to the Future. Great movie, terrible game. Like Paperboy, but without the fun.
Oh god.
So, but I got Robo Warrior, took it home, was immediately impressed because it was already looking miles better. And then only to discover I couldn't do a damn thing in it. The screen kept repeating. I had no idea where to go, what to do, or anything like that. So I basically just shot and killed things until I finally died. I found out later that in Japan, it's called Bomber King, and it's referred to by Japanese fans as Suicide King.
Oh.
Well, this is a far skip down from the cute games we were just talking about.
It's still got its cute elements to it, though.
Oh, yeah, like the skulls on snake tails, for example.
Those are adorable.
Oh no.
Absolutely. What do you say?
It is Bomberman adjacent, so which is why I brought it up.
Yeah, Robo Warrior really does what Act Zero tried and failed to do many, many years earlier and better. It's definitely a flawed game. I do find actually getting through the stages kind of a pain in the ass, but it's a childhood favorite for me, and I freaking love the music in it. So, yeah, cool stuff.
So, on that note, yeah, there's a lot of other games we could have talked about tonight, but we just didn't have the time. So maybe we'll come back and revisit this some other time and do some other ones.
Nice.
But until then, our next stream, I'm thinking about possibly doing Gradius, because that's a big one on my list I want to cover. And if that's the case, we'll be covering Gradius, Salamander, Proteus, and we'll even touch on Twin Beast, since we didn't get a chance to touch on that tonight.
And Odo Media. No.
No, we have to talk about Odomedius. I'm afraid. You know, I spent $10 in that game. And after I played it, it occurred to me I could have spent that $10 on something more useful, like a set of screwdrivers or something. But, you know, it's I played through it, and it's not 100% terrible, but it's definitely, if that was meant to be the successor to Proteus, they failed.
Yeah. It's no death smiles, I can tell you that.
Oh, definitely not. But yeah,
And
obviously-
actually, having played and beaten Death Smiles recently, really damn good game. Actually,
Hell yeah.
Death Smiles is
Good
very
job.
good. It's another one of my kids' favorites.
can't believe I
Big-
waited so long to get around to it. But
Big fan of the cave shmups.
yeah,
But
yeah,
of course,
I'm definitely warming up to them.
we do have a shooter stream we'll be doing, just general shooters.
Oh yes,
So, and other ones, there's going to be a Taito stream now. Thank you, Mike. And at some point, I'm hoping this will come actually after the Gradius stream. It's either going to be a Castlevania stream or, and if my plans work out, a Splatterhouse stream. And there'll be some very special guests that night. I guarantee you'd never be able to guess who. And if you don't know much about Splatterhouse, then it wouldn't mean anything anyway. But that's beside the point. So, thanks to everyone who showed up and stuck around this whole time. And thank you to my excellent co-hosts, Kate, Mike, and Kyle.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having me.
It's
I
been a
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. It's been an honor.
That's been rad, very much.
And thank you to everybody in the chat. So, we will catch you next time. And y'all have a good night.
Take care, everybody.